Chapter 209. Whether sadness was part of the injury or not, Xia had no time to think about it. Purely in terms of damage, although Wang Lu's 2 punches were heavy, they were not fatal. What was fatal was the serious injury that was previously suppressed in his body, which was inherited from the original Tiger King. Although Xia's possession was successful, with his King Pill level foundation, he couldn't really utilize the power of Yuanying stage. According to his speculation, without more than 10 years of cultivation, he couldn't even display half of his original strength. Of course, compared to his original body, it was still much stronger. Unfortunately, at least at this time he was seriously injured. Although he was in Yuanying stage, he couldn't do anything to Wang Lu, who only knew how to swing his fist. After being hit by the 2 punches on his face, Xia's injury broke out. His internal organs were burned, and his huge tiger head almost burst into tears as he staggered back. The Beast Master school elders around him were also shocked and quickly prepared to save him. Various magical power flashed one after another, which almost covered the dawn and shrouded the sky above the full moon valley. Xia turned pale with fright and almost cussed out loud. He hastily waved his hands to stop the stupid behavior of this group of people. Wang Lu was an expert in rebounding damage. These people went all out. Did they want to kill him? Right now, what Wang Lu hit him was only his inner emotion. However, if those dozens of spells fell down and were transmitted by the method of resonance, he would really die. From the beginning, Xia didn't expect to be able to defeat his opponent in a head-on confrontation. For the successor disciples from the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League, skipping level challenge was a common occurrence. To deal with Wang Lu, he still had to use other means. Don't you want the antidote for Lu Li? This was Xia's trump card. The poisonous dagger in Catgirl Lingyan's hand was given to her by him. Naturally, only Xia himself had the antidote. As long as he threatened the other party with the antidote, he was not afraid that he would not comply. In fact, the more angry Wang Lu was, the more he cared about Lu Li. And the more he cared, the easier it was for him to yield. Unfortunately, Xia really didn't understand Wang Lu. I don't want it. Bam. In Xia's endless consternation, the 3rd heavy punch came. This time, Xia was prepared. He immediately transferred his magical power to fly backward. However, unexpectedly, after being punched twice, his jade mansion was filled with raging flames, and his magical power could not be operated as he wished. He inherited Tiger King's nascent soul and body, and the wind followed the dragon and the tiger followed the wind followed the tiger. He almost instinctively used the wind technique. In a hurry, Xia managed to turn his head. Wang Lu's fist gently brushed past his cheek, and immediately, his ferocious tiger head swelled up. At the same time, Xia felt that in his jade mansion, the purple-black Dao heart that had fused with Tiger King's Dao heart was ignited. In an instant, it was burned into a complete mess, and the purple-red Yuanying faintly showed signs of melting. Chen to say to him. Xia. Of to Lu. Xia, A2 to the Xia was to say. To of Lu of. Do you think Zen Master Guru can save her? Only I can cure that poison. If you don't take the antidote within 15 minutes, you will die. Idiot. Wang Lu's voice was cold and full of ridicule. After 3 punches, the anger in his heart subsided slightly. Moreover, he could no longer use the burning heart fist. Unlike Xia's imagination, sadness couldn't simply be regarded as a kind of injury. At this time, Wang Lu used the resonance ability of the nameless sword to guide the Jade Mansion's fire to the opposite party, which was actually a very subtle edge ball. The great vow of the heart demon did not allow anyone to touch the edge. The object that Wang Lu was restricting, as well as the person that he was supervising and restricting, were all himself. No deceptive tricks on the surface of cognition could hide from his own heart. Moreover, as a form of self-restraint, the great vow of heart demons was a zero-sum game. The reward of the vow came precisely from the restraint. At the same time that he lied to himself, even if he didn't trigger the punishment of his inner demons, he would lose the reward that the oath gave him. Even if it was just an edge ball, it would greatly shake the great vow of heart demons. In Wang Lu's life plan, the existence of the great vow of heart demons was extremely necessary. Therefore, if he wanted to satisfy both sides, there was only one way. To calmly accept the fact that he had touched the edge ball, and also calmly accept the punishment of his inner demons. If the inner demons wanted to take his life, Then he would burn his life as a sacrifice to the inner demons until he was satisfied. Of course, life was precious and fragile. Directly igniting the life was a suicidal path. Therefore, Wang Lu chose the path of compensation. Innate vitality is really a good thing. Wang Lu secretly sighed with emotion. If it weren't for his master teaching him this little trick, he really wouldn't be able to resist the great vow of heart demons and take the initiative to hurt the enemy. However, it was no wonder that before he went down the mountain, his master had solemnly exhorted him. Using innate vitality to touch the edge ball is fine, but you must not directly break the vow, otherwise, it would be a dead end. It was indeed a dead end. Just now he had thrown out 3 punches in succession, and each punch had 10 years of his lifespan taken away by the inner demons. The binding force of the great vow of heart demons was so appalling. Just by touching the edge ball 3 times, he had to pay the price of 30 years of his lifespan. If he directly broke the vow and brandished the sword of Mount Kuan like a wandering dragon, the leaf fire and the weak water would shine on each other. Perhaps with just one strike, Wang Lu's current several hundred years of lifespan would be squandered away. However, in Wang Lu's view, the price of 30 years was still very cost-effective. Of course, it was not about seriously injuring a xia. For this kind of trash creature, spending 3 moments would be a waste. Instead, it was about using 30 years of lifespan as the price to extinguish the inner fire in his jade mansion and leave an unforgettable mark. Just now, when Lu Li was seriously injured, the non-phase immortal heart in Wang Lu's jade mansion crazily operated, and a blood-red flame flowed out from it, burning everything in the jade mansion. That was the authentic inner demon fire. Because of Wang Lu's great vow of heart demons, once he faced a great emotional fluctuation, it was possible to draw out this kind of demonic fire that was comparable to the heavenly fire. After Wang Lu's 3 punches quelled the sea of fire, his jade mansion soon restored its calm. However, on the surface of his non-phase immortal heart, a black mark that was difficult to eliminate was left. Of course, if it had to be eliminated, there would always be a way. However, Wang Lu wanted to keep it, so that he could always remember this lesson at the cost of 30 years of his lifespan. A professional adventurer was indeed very powerful, but it was still far from being omniscient and omnipotent. A little bit of carelessness, and he couldn't even protect the people around him who were worthy of his attention. Wasn't it good to have this kind of understanding? As for the poison in Lu Li, that was another problem. After 3 punches, Wang Lu's mood calmed down. Feeling the change in Wang Lu, a xia was like a drowning man grasping at straws. Thinking that he had found a chance to survive, he hastily opened his mouth to say, "Do you think that just because you came from one of the 5 uniques of the Onxian League, you can run amok in 9 regions? You elite disciples all have life-saving elixirs given by your elders, which can detoxify thousands of poisons. However, my devouring heart-rotting bone poison is not among the common thousands of poisons. It's not that easy to detoxify it. Moreover, I have the famous brilliant sword heart physique. Once I'm poisoned, the poison will immediately spread to the whole body. Without my help, Lu Li would undoubtedly die." As if to echo a xia's roar, Xueqi's slightly hurried voice came. "Wang Lu, Lu Li's poison has been detoxified." Ha! A xia was stunned for a long time, and then he furiously said, "You want to trick me? It's not that easy. You're just a king pill cultivator, yet you want to detoxify the devouring heart-rotting bone poison, you." While speaking, his tiger eyes looked down and saw Zen Master Guru and another bald man standing side by side, emitting a soft Zen light that surrounded Lu Li. The girl was indeed seriously injured. Her face was pale, but the pitch-black gas of the devouring heart-rotting bone poison was nowhere to be seen. This poison seemed to have been detoxified. Impossible! A xia's eyes almost popped out. Cat Girl Ling Yan's poisonous dagger was an ancient weapon with thousands of years of history that he obtained after experiencing an extremely rare immortal opportunity. The poison's effectiveness had declined a lot compared to its peak, but its strong point was its strange toxicity, which was completely different from the common poisons in the 9 regions. Even if a sect like the 10,000 Poison School wanted to detoxify it, it would be a bit troublesome. She was just an unknown Zen master, how could she detoxify it? In a xia's deduction, the only way for Wang Lu to survive was to activate the Spirit Sword Heavenly Talisman, immediately bring everyone back to Spirit Sword Mountain, and let the sect elders come forward to suppress the poison. However, after the Heavenly Talisman was launched, although Wang Lu, Lu Li, and Quan Zhuhua could go, Immortal Beast Moon Spirit and Zen Master Guru couldn't. They didn't leave their mark on the heavenly talisman, so they weren't sent away. At that time, even if they couldn't catch Wang Lu, they could still catch the Moon Spirit. However, now that the biggest trump card had actually failed, Xia's shock could be imagined. You want to know the principle? It's very simple. It's not that you underestimated the power of Xueqi's detoxification, but you misjudged Lu Li's poison resistance. Wang Lu said. Because his mood was relaxed, he explained a bit more. It's a wise move not to set me as the target. Although that dagger is a spiritual object, it's a dead object. Although the poison is fierce, it has no vitality. Even if it stabs me, my own poison resistance can solve most of the poison. However, Lu Li's brilliant sword heart has a clear physique, so in theory, her poison resistance is close to zero. Once the poison breaks out, even if the sect elders make a move, it would be very troublesome. However, although she has too many weaknesses, her poison resistance is the only one that's still worth looking at. While speaking, Wang Lu couldn't help but laugh. That idiot is greedy by nature. When she sees something novel, regardless of whether it's dangerous or not, she still wants to put it in her mouth. Moreover, she completely has no memory. In that peaceful place on the mountain, she has repeatedly been poisoned by food, so she has to always carry the elder's antidote pill with her to prevent her from dying prematurely. A few years ago, she went down the mountain for experiential learning for a year. She wrote the experiential learning report as a food diary, which made the elders furious. However, behind the diary is the bitterness of tasting tens of thousands of poisons in dozens of countries in the Blue River region. Do you think the sentence in the diary, "Today, I ate sweet tofu pudding, meat dumplings, I feel very uncomfortable"? How much crisis and pain do you think is hidden behind it? Surviving in such experiential learning, how high do you think her poison resistance is? After a pause, Wang Lu looked at the ashen-faced Xia with a sneer. Therefore, using poison to plot against Lu Li, you're really courting death. Before his voice fell, he heard Xueqi anxiously and angrily urged, "Don't waste time." Although her poison has been eliminated, the damage caused by the instantaneous attack of the poison can't be offset. Her situation is still very dangerous. I can barely suppress it from worsening, but she's not completely out of danger. Quickly deal with the problem and come back to help me. Am I now? With that, Wang Lu withdrew his fist and brandished the sword of Mount Kuan. His eyes turned cold and firmly locked on Xia. The idle talk is over. It's time to send you on your way. Chapter 2:10. Enough with the idle talk. It's time to send you on your way. When Wang Lu lifted the sword of Mount Kuan, this thick and simple sword exuded a cold aura like the 9th level of the abyss, which made Xia's body quivered. That was the sword spirit Autumn Beam's anger. Xia used a despicable means to simultaneously plot against the cat girl Ling Yan and Lu Li. Autumn Beam, who had always been on good terms with Lu Li and sympathized with the cat girl, was already boiling with anger. At this time, with Wang Lu's shoot-on stage cultivation base, the spiritual treasure seal was only left with the last 2 layers, thus its power was greatly released. Autumn Beam didn't even need to show her true form. Her anger alone was enough to make Xia's blood run cold. In theory, if there was enough magical power support, a spiritual treasure with a high enough level could fight alone. Moreover, its fighting power was not low. Therefore, seeing that Wang Lu's sword of Mount Kuan was eager to try, Xia's panic increased. Is this guy planning to sacrifice his spiritual treasure to avoid the big heart demon oath? Then, as long as he blocked the other elders, the spiritual treasure sword of Mount Kuan could fight me alone. If it was the Real Tiger King, perhaps he wouldn't be afraid of the threat of a low-level spiritual treasure, but he was. Not to mention that he was seriously injured and unable to move. Even if his injury was healed, his ability was far from being able to bring out 1/10 or 2/10 of this body's power. If he encountered a full-strength sword of Mount Kuan, he would die without a doubt. Thinking of this, Xia became even more terrified. His biggest trump card had failed. He was almost doomed to come here complacently, but he would have to return with no face. Even if he could come back alive, it was still a different matter. Fortunately, he was cautious by nature. Before he made his move, he would definitely prepare a lot of cards. Now, he had to take out the card that had been lying in ambush for the longest time and had the biggest side effect. Wang Lu, you can't kill me. Because it will dirty my hands? It doesn't matter. I'm not afraid of being dirty. Wang Lu lightly said, his imposing manner becoming more and more powerful. Although he knew that he was bound by the big heart demon oath, Xia still felt that the opposite party seemed to be able to rush up at any time and use the crudest and most direct means to kill him. Therefore, he hurriedly said, I have people in the Yu clan of Celestial Water Lake. This trump card was really unexpected. Wang Lu let out a soft cry of surprise and slightly restrained his momentum. Celestial Water Lake? Seeing that his trump card worked, Xia suddenly felt lucky to have escaped from the jaws of death. However, things had not been settled yet. Wang Lu could turn against him at any time. Therefore, Xia didn't dare to take it lightly. His brain quickly organized the wording to achieve the best effect. You came to Yunzhou to gain experience and pretended to be a cultivator from the Yu family of Celestial Water Lake. It's because you have a junior sister from the Yu family of Celestial Water Lake in Lingzhen School, right? Wang Lu nodded. Yes, by her convenience, Lu Li and I got two identities. So, when you learned about this, you sent people to Celestial Water Lake? Well, although the Yu family has some reputation in the last 2 generations, except for Yu Xinyao, the others are not good. Even the head of the family is barely a high-level Taoist master of King Pill. Moreover, although they have the cultivation, they are not good at fighting. They are a family famous for refining tools, so their strength is not strong. If your Beast Master School were to use force to threaten me, the Yu family would not have the ability to resist. So, you want to use the Yu family to threaten me? Xia said, I don't dare to say it's a threat, but I hope you must think about it clearly. There's no need to make it a lose-lose situation. Wang Lu sneered. Lose-lose situation? Is there something wrong with your brain? Even if the Yu family people die, what does it have to do with me? Xia seriously said, don't pretend. As far as I know, you shouldn't be that kind of person. Although your reputation is in dispute because of the earth-shattering bet in the sect competition a few years ago, none of the information shows that you are a cold-blooded cultivator who is cruel to your own people. On the contrary, most of the information speculated that you have a protective mentality. Ha ha ha, well said. Wang Lu laughed. Although in theory, whatever your Beast Master School did to the Yu family, you should bear the responsibility alone. However, I won't completely stay out of it. After all, when I asked for junior sister's identity, it means that once I provoke an opponent, it will implicate her family. However, I want to ask you, when you bought the information from the intelligence merchant at a high price, did it ever mention that I'm an idiot? Xia was stunned. What kind of question is this? If he answered seriously, of course, it was impossible. On the contrary, any of the information would focus on describing Wang Lu's intelligence. Perhaps purely in terms of intelligence, there was no evidence to prove that he was smarter than those famous geniuses in the immortal cultivation world of 9 regions, more proficient in calculation. However, at least he was absolutely not an idiot. And from his own experience, Xia also boasted that he was smart, but ever since he confronted Wang Lu, every confrontation was a complete rout. Now that Wang Lu asked such a question, could it be that? I've long guessed that some despicable people would use this to threaten me, so I've made preparations in advance. You think that your evil plan has succeeded, but in fact, you're just showing off your shamelessness for no reason. Wang Lu said. Obviously, his stature was not as tall and sturdy as Tiger King's, but he revealed a condescending and disdainful look. What a pathetic creature. You want to trick me, right? Xia's mind heated up, and his mood suddenly went out of control. Do you think I'm an idiot? Guessed that this might happen, and took precautions in advance? You really have such foresight. How could you not expect that the cat girl Ling Yan was sent by me as an undercover agent? Moreover, you still have a clear conscience in accepting her as your subordinate, and thus seriously injuring your baby junior sister. Upon hearing Xia's roar, Wang Lu's smile disappeared, and his brows gradually furrowed. That's right, it was indeed his own judgment error that caused Lu Li to suffer this ordeal. Although it didn't lead to the worst result, it was not Wang Lu's credit. If it weren't for Lu Li herself testing the poison for many years, this time, the situation would be really troublesome. Although being pointed at and scolded by a wretch was somewhat unfashionable, nevertheless, it was an impressive lesson. Seeing that Wang Lu didn't speak, Xia thought that he had guessed correctly and began to laugh wildly. Sure enough, I guessed it right. You're tricking me. Actually, in normal times, although a Xia had a variety of flaws, he was not an impulsive person. It was just that, after being hit by Wang Lu's burning heart fist twice, his rational mind was damaged, and his heart was set ablaze. Thus, his mood could no longer be controlled. While laughing, he took out a crystal mirror. I've already let Chi Ho take the spirit beasts to Celestial Water Lake. Although he was seriously injured and couldn't be of use, he carried my token, which allowed him to command a spirit beast that has been in human form for a long time. That spirit beast's cultivation base is infinitely close to Yuanying stage, and it alone can flatten more than 100 people of Yu family at Celestial Water Lake. A day ago, I got the news from Chi Ho that I've exchanged my token for that spirit beast's promise. Now, I've probably already controlled the entire Yu family. Whether they live or die, it all depends on your reaction. While speaking, he reluctantly transferred a trace of magical power into the mirror, activating the mechanism, and then light and shadow were reflected from the mirror. That was the magical tool that he gave to Chi Ho to maintain contact with him. Now, as long as he let Wang Lu see the scene of Yu family being completely controlled by him, he believed that he would make a rational choice. Moreover, if he operated it well, perhaps not only he could save his own life, he could even ask for the immortal beast moon spirit. That was something that even the real Tiger King couldn't do, but in his hand, there was a hope for a comeback. This should be enough to show that he was stronger than the real one, right? Thinking about this, time passed by bit. A moment later, Xia suddenly discovered that, although the crystal mirror in his hand reflected light and shadow, the light had been distorted and blurred, and he couldn't see the real face. This was because the two sides holding the mirror did not strictly synchronize the magical power, which caused the distortion. Bing didn't care. At this time, he was outputting Tiger King's magical power, which was quite different from the original, so it was normal for there to be a change. However, as long as Chi Ho adjusted it, the two sides could synchronize. Chi Ho, what are you doing? Hurry up and adjust your magical power. Xia angrily urged. At this time, he had yet to recover from his serious injury, so he didn't have the energy to adjust the magical power. After waiting for a while, the light in the mirror was still unstable. Xia felt that a haze had once again gathered in his heart. It seemed that something important was about to go wrong. Actually, I'm not a genius who calculates everything. What I can do is nothing more than to do things in detail. Before I went down the mountain, I guessed that I might bring trouble to your family, but it's impossible to predict in advance what kind of trouble I would encounter, what kind of opponent I would encounter, and it's even more impossible to invest a lot of resources to strengthen the defense. With so many resources, I should just keep them for my own use, okay? Therefore, I took advantage of the situation. This time, in addition to me and Luli going down the mountain, there are also other disciples in the sect who got the opportunity to go down the mountain for experiential learning. Junior sister Yu Xinyao happened to be planning to go home to visit her family, so I told her that she could take this opportunity to invite other senior brothers and sisters to her home as a guest. Yu family is a big refiner, so we could take this opportunity to send some magical tools to form good karma. And at that time, the one who came with her as a guest, Wang Lu said, deliberately tantalizing him. After a pause, he revealed the answer. The one who accompanied her is our big sister of Spirit Sword Mountain, Xueqi. Xueqi. Xia gawked for a moment before he remembered that she was the head of the successor disciples of Lingjian School, the peerless genius whose strength was even above Wang Lu and Lu Li. However, no matter how talented she was, her current cultivation base was at most low-level Shudan stage. In the face of a spirit beast that was close to Yuanying stage, she had no chance. That was one of his most proud works in the Southern Heaven region as a beast tamer. Compared to the cat girl Ling Yan, its strength was many times stronger, simply not on the same level. The only hateful thing was that, because of some lucky coincidences, the imprint on that spirit beast was not particularly stable. Therefore, he could only occasionally ask for help from him, but could not enslave it as he pleased like he did with Ling Yan. With him, along with a large number of low-level spirit beasts that formed the 10,000 Beasts Great Array, a mere Yu family of Celestial Water Lake and a Shudan stage Xueqi. While he was thinking, the light and shadow in the crystal mirror suddenly changed. Xia was inwardly delighted, thinking, Chi Ho, that idiot, finally reacted? He should have succeeded. Not only the Yu family, but also Yu Xinyao who went home to visit her family, as well as that Xueqi. All of them should be under his control. That is an out-and-out brilliant achievement, as long as In the throbbing heartbeat sound, the light and shadow finally condensed into shape, and a voice came from the mirror. It was Chi-Ho. However, at this time, his face was full of blood. His body was seriously injured, and his voice was weak. Failed. That person is so strong. You never told me before that there would be such a person. With just one sword strike, that shape-shifted spirit beast was beheaded. Even its primordial spirit couldn't escape. We are now. Crash. Chi-Ho's voice abruptly stopped. It turned out that a Xia had inadvertently crushed the mirror. His body trembled uncontrollably, indicating the infinite despair and panic in his heart. This time it was really over. Chapter 2:11. Sending Chi-Ho to the celestial water lake Yu family was undoubtedly a dangerous move, even a dead move. At first, it was just to verify the identity of Wang Lu and Lu Li through the channel of the celestial water lake. And this step was indeed very fast. Chi-Ho infiltrated the celestial water lake Yu family and soon found out the truth. An unexpected truth. When a Xia learned that Wang Lu came from the Lingjian school, one of the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League, the fear in his heart once overwhelmed his greed. The 5 uniques of the Wanxian League were not as simple as being one level stronger than the top-rank sections. Except for the special case of the Lingjian school, the other 4 super sects, no matter how the later generations painted them, in the end, their status was piled up by mountains of corpses and seas of blood. More than 6,000 years ago, the Age of Chaos disintegrated the almost absolute ruling position of Kunlun Immortal Sect. 2,000 years ago, the Great War of Immortals and Demons established the supreme status of Shangjing Sect. 10,000 Art Sect and Royal Soldier Sect also took advantage of the situation and established their own sections. The rise of Spirit Sword Mountain was relatively low-key. Since its establishment 4,000 years ago, its tentacles have always been limited to the Blue River region, never expanding outward. There was quite a controversy in the Wanxian League as to why it could be on par with the other 4 super sections. However, from one point of view, Spirit Sword Mountain absolutely could not be ignored. Since its establishment 4,000 years ago, Lingjian School had never lost in a foreign war. At least, no sect dared to confidently say that they had won against Lingjian School in a sect-level large-scale war, none of them. Therefore, a Xia absolutely did not want to provoke Lingjian School. Even if Lingjian School's influence outside of the Blue River region was notoriously weak, even worse than some middle-rank sects, it was, after all, one of the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League. If it was just teaching Wang Lu a lesson until he was disheveled and even bleeding, Spirit Sword Mountain would not have too much of a reaction. For these super sects, if their talented disciples suffered setbacks, not only would it not damage their reputation, it would also be a good thing. It could let their arrogant disciples grow up step by step. So what if they lost some face? Only Royal Soldier Sect was relatively protective. However, if a Xia used despicable means to threaten a sect disciple's family, then it would be a different matter. Lingjian School would never tolerate such a despicable act. As for how to retaliate, Lingjian School had no precedent. However, if they followed the example of the Shangjing Sect, one of the 5 uniques, Beast Master School wouldn't be able to be ranked among the top-ranked sects in the next 200 years. A Xia certainly didn't want to provoke such a terrifying opponent, but at this time, his life was at stake. Did he have a choice? His biggest trump card had failed, so even if he knew that it was like drinking poison to quench his thirst, he could only do it first. However, he never would have thought that things would change so quickly. In order to be on the safe side, although he had ordered Chi-Ho to pay close attention to the Yu clan's manner a day ago, the real order to take action was actually made after Wang Lu had cracked his first trump card, which was just a few sentences ago. Therefore, rather than saying that Wang Lu was deceiving him, it would be better to say that he was deceiving Wang Lu. Chi-Ho and his shape-shifted spirit beast had indeed arrived at the celestial water lake Yu clan, but they didn't make their move to start the war. Of course, in a Xia's calculation, a spirit beast at the limit of King Pill, plus the 10,000 beasts array arranged by Chi-Ho, would be able to control the situation with just a few sentences. However, he didn't expect that after a few sentences, the situation had undergone such a dramatic change. Big Sister is indeed Big Sister. She's always so mighty. I thought that after Mai and Lu Li's fortuitous encounter, even if I can't surpass her at least, I would be able to keep pace with her. It seems like I still have to practice. Wang Lu repeatedly clicked his tongue, but each of his words made a Xia's mood further fall to the bottom. However, It was also at this time that Xueqi's primordial spirit voice rang in Wang Lu's ears. Enough. Why are you talking nonsense with that trash? Don't you know that talking nonsense is easy to be overturned? My situation here is not optimistic. Why don't you hurry back? There was still a mocking and disdainful smile hanging on Wang Lu's face, but in the primordial spirit conversation with Xueqi, his voice was full of helplessness. Go back? What's going on? Including the Beast Master School's spirit beasts, there are 20 King Pill level experts around me. I'm in mid-air, my feet don't touch the ground, and my non-phase method hasn't reached the realm of void facing the wind yet. Do you really think I can kill my way in and out? Xueqi was also stunned. You. In other words, just now, you were impulsive and rushed into the enemy's formation, and then you were trapped there and couldn't come back? Well, even when you raised your sword to behead a Xia, it was also a pretense? In fact, you can't even make your move? Then what should I do? Do you need my help? Are you going to let go? Forget it, I can solve it myself. Even if I don't make my move, it doesn't matter, it won't take too long. I'll have to trouble you to hold Lu Li's side. I'll be back soon. With that, Wang Lu cut off the conversation with Xueqi and turned his attention back to a Xia. All of his cards have failed. A Xia was really forced into a dead end. His mind was at a loss, and infinite despair was reflected in his tiger head. However, at this time, he heard Wang Lu leisurely open his mouth. If you want to live, I'll give you a chance. What? Kneel down and apologize, hand over your antidote, and I'll spare your life. Of course, don't get me wrong, I really need the antidote. It's nothing more than to let my junior sister quickly end her pain. If you don't hand it over, it doesn't matter to me. Xia's eyes showed a struggle. A moment later, he tremblingly took out a small blue bottle from his mustard seed bag. Wang Lu took it and directly threw it to Xueqi in the full moon valley behind him. Okay, I'll take the antidote. Next, as long as you kneel down and apologize, I'll let bygones be bygones. Xia hoarsely said. Do you dare to swear? Big heart demon oath. Say you'll let bygones be bygones. Wang Lu laughed. Big heart demon oath? It doesn't matter. Do you really think your life is valuable? In my opinion, the life and death of a trash like you is really not important. Therefore, if you kneel down and kneel properly, it will make me feel better. It doesn't matter if I let you live. Next, Wang Lu really called out the heart demon and made an oath in front of the heart demon oath. Moreover, the binding scope of the oath was wider than Xia expected. I swear, as long as he kneels down and begs for mercy in front of me, my friends and I will never harm him again. If I violate this oath, I'm willing to die under the entanglement of the heart demon. When Xia heard Wang Lu's understatement of the oath, his intuition told him that there must be a trap. However, on the one hand, he was seriously injured and his Dao heart was damaged, so his thinking ability had fallen to the bottom. On the other hand, in order to survive, he had no other choice. Therefore, after struggling for a long time, he finally slowly lowered his body. Since he was in mid-air, his knees naturally couldn't touch the ground, but his kneeling action was exactly the same. Hee, you're ambitious. Wang Lu didn't even spare him a glance. He contemptuously smiled, turned around, and walked away. Xia, who was kneeling in mid-air, slowly moved his eyes along with Wang Lu. However, he suddenly found something wrong. How could he just let him go like that? He alone rushed into the enemy's formation, obviously surrounded by so many experts, but he actually just walked away like that? Did he make a mistake? However, before his dull brain could think deeper, he heard Wang Lu chuckle and said, Elders of Beastmaster School, why haven't you made your move yet? What are you waiting for? This fake swindled and swindled, profaned the dignity of the great elder Lei Zhan, and almost brought a huge disaster to your Beastmaster School. According to your school's rules, killing him on the spot is reasonable. Xia felt like a bomb exploded in his brain. Wang Lu's plan suddenly became clear. No matter how slow he was, he still understood. This guy was really a despicable and cunning person. Although I'm hostile to your great elder Lei Zhan, I recognize that he is a respectable man. He has strength, courage, and responsibility. If I didn't have the help of the mountain spirit, relying solely on my own cultivation base, I may not be his opponent even after 10 years. If it were any other occasion, I would be very willing to make friends with him. With that, Wang Lu looked back at the Beast Master School elders. Led by Elder Gong Yang, there was an unusually complex look on his face. Obviously, his heart was deeply shaken by Wang Lu's words. And the great Elder Lei Zhan that I approve of would never use this kind of despicable trick. Hey, coercing a poor cat girl to act as an assassin for you, trying to kill a young girl, and even using an ancient strange poison. Even the behavior of the demon race was not as despicable as this. Moreover, when you failed, you even used other people's family to threaten them. Aren't you afraid of the divine punishment for such a despicable act? Speaking to this, the Beast Master School elders revealed a look of shame. Obviously, they were also deeply ashamed. No matter how many people criticized the conduct of the Beast Master School, they were not a sinister and despicable sect. Xia's conduct was completely not recognized by them. If it's the Real Tiger King, even if he really did an unjust act for various reasons, he would certainly persist until the end, even if he had to die. At least, he would never kneel down to others in order to drag out an ignoble existence. Wang Lu said, and then helplessly spread out his hands with a smile. That's why I say a fake is a fake. At the beginning, his performance was somewhat realistic, but when his life is in danger, his true colors are revealed. Xia, you only have this bit of skill. Xia? Hearing this name, several elders were shocked. Wang Lu asked, "What are you pretending for? He has already acted to this extent, yet you really can't see his identity? Forget it. I've done what I should say and do. Now you guys can clean up your own sect." With that, Wang Lu no longer lingered. His figure floated down, and his figure rapidly shrank in Xia's line of sight. Xia felt his brain was buzzing. At the last moment, he was really unwilling to let it end like this. He loudly shouted, "Gong Yangyue, Liang Yu, what are you waiting for? You just let him go like this? Hurry up and catch him for me." If he could catch Wang Lu, there was still a chance to turn things around. As the division's great elder, even if he was seriously injured and dying, as long as he was still in control of the division, then, "Enough, you bastard." What answered Xia was a beast-tooth sword that pierced through his back and came out of his chest. Elder Liang Yu's eyes were red, and his hair stood up in anger. All his life, the great elder was magnanimous. Unexpectedly, after his death, his reputation was tarnished by a filthy person like you. You used the great elder's body to do such a shameless act. 100 deaths can't atone for it. Xia struggled to say that he was the great elder. However, the injury that broke out in his body made him unable to say a word, and his sight soon fell into darkness. Why? What exactly did I do wrong? I'm obviously better than the Real Tiger King. How could I become like this? Why do you, this group of mediocre people, refuse to obey me? If you could let me command you from the beginning, the ending would definitely be different. Idiot! In the darkness, Xia suddenly heard a roar. The familiar voice startled him. In the darkness, a burly body gradually emitted a glimmer of light. That person had a tiger face and a human body. It was actually Tiger King Lei Zhan. How could you? Aren't you dead? Why are you here? Am I also dead? Impossible, how could I die? Humph, you're indeed not dead, though not by much. This body and nascent soul are both mine. Why can't I appear? Tiger King coldly snorted. What do you think? Using my body to play my role, are you happy now? Xia was stunned, and then he clenched his teeth. Yes, I did fail. So you're gloating over my misfortune? Tiger King scoffed at this. Do you think you're worthy for me to gloat over your misfortune? If that Wang Lu failed, I would actually laugh a few times. You. With that, Tiger King couldn't help but sigh. Speaking of which, I'm the one who harmed you. All these years, seeing how pitiful you are, knowing that your temperament has become more and more extreme, and your means of doing things are also unbearably despicable, yet I let it slide. I even acted as your umbrella to shelter you from the wind and rain, allowing you to become more and more arrogant, thinking that just because you have a bit of crooked talent, you would be successful in every endeavor. You went further and further on the wrong path, until finally, there's no turning back. Humph, to die in the hands of people like you, I only have myself to blame. Xia was stunned. What protective umbrella are you talking about? Tiger King coldly said, if it weren't for me protecting you, do you think that disciplinary elder would let you go just because of what you've done in the sect all these years? Do you really think it's because your beast taming skill is good that you've been recognized by the higher-ups? If it weren't for me protecting you, you would have been locked in the black beast cage for 1,000 years. Now that I think about it, perhaps I should have let you live in the black beast cage for a few years. At that time, the sect leader also advised me that spoiling you too much would only harm others and myself. At that time, I just treated it as fart, but now it seems like I'm really blinded by lard. Asia's heart was filled with shock. How come I never knew about these things? Tiger King cast him a glance. Is it necessary for you to know? Why do you have to do so much for me? You were pushed out from the southern heaven region to the cloud region, could it be? Tiger King said, Hey, why do you have to do so much? Do you still need to ask? Unfortunately, in these past few decades, I really didn't know that you're actually so reluctant. I remember that at the very beginning, I declared that if you don't like it, I won't force you. As a result, you took the initiative to crawl over. All these years, you've really endured humiliation. Listening to the ridicule in Tiger King's words, Asia's heart was filled with mixed feelings. He even quietly felt a trace of guilt. However, in the end, he still stubbornly said, You can only blame yourself for being blind. Tiger King laughed. Well said, I'm indeed blind and lost my brain, so I deserve to die in your hands. However, in any case, I'm smart for once before I die. Asia, after you took over my body, although my heart was filled with hatred, the words of a dying man are also kind. I thought that these past few decades were mostly happy, so I wanted to give you a final piece of advice. Unexpectedly, before I opened my mouth, you impatiently pounced on me. Therefore I, your father, finally bit my tongue to commit suicide, swallowing that advice. What advice? I, your father, want to warn you, you can provoke anyone, but don't provoke that kid Wang Lu, ha 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 ha. However, even if I told you at that time, you probably just treated it as fart, so you deserve to die here. Asia gritted his teeth. I won't die. That's not up to you. Tiger King's smile faded, and the light on his body suddenly became intense, illuminating the surrounding scene. It was not the Jade Mansion or primordial spirit that Asia expected, nor was it the Crown Cloud Peak or the Full Moon Valley, but a place filled with dense smoke. A huge stone gate stood in front of him, and the towering figure exuded a heart-palpitating aura. This is, Tiger King coldly said, welcome to the gates of hell, ghost. Okay, let's go in together. I don't want to die. Go to hell yourself. Asia frantically struggled. However, when he brandished his fist, he found out that the strong body that he inherited from Tiger King had disappeared. Instead, it was replaced by the emaciated body that he hated and cursed. Such a body had no resistance in front of Tiger King. Tiger King picked up Asia and laughed wildly all the way into the stone gate. From now on, we have endless time to love. I, your father, swear that I will make you fall in love with me. Ha 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 ha. Chapter 2:12. How is Lu Li's situation? After calmly withdrawing from the encirclement, Wang Lu's feet landed on the ground. The indifferent look on his face was immediately replaced by a trace of irrepressible anxiety. Xueqi gave him a blank look. You finally remembered the business? Really, when you're hot-headed, you don't care about anything else. Do you think you're mighty just because you rushed into the enemy's formation? Impossibly stupid. You've been bragging about the quality of a professional adventurer. Wasting time with a trash. You're really childish. Wang Lu urged, less nonsense, let's get down to business. What's the situation? You still have the face to urge me? Xueqi shook his head helplessly. The situation isn't that great. Xiao Liuli's poison resistance isn't bad, and with the antidote, the poison was quickly expelled. However, the dagger pierced her vitals, and with the poison erupting at the beginning, the damage is real. With that, Xueqi bent down, turned the unconscious Lu Li over, and tore open the clothes on her back, revealing her snow-white back muscles. A black wound was ugly entrenched on her back, and along the wound, a black line spread to the rest of her body. Seeing the wound, Wang Lu could not help but frown. From the knowledge he learned in Tang Cloud Hall, with the basic skill of Lingjian School's disciples, once they reached Shudan stage, their bodies would be highly tempered, and their vitality would be far stronger than that of ordinary cultivators. Even Lu Li, who was known for being good at attack but not good at defense, her body's toughness was close to that of a common-sex Taoist Master King pill. In theory, even if her heart was stabbed by a knife, she would not die, especially with the help of a Zen master like Xueqi. Even if her head was cut off, as long as it was immediately reattached, she could still live. However, now that Lu Li was wrapped in Zen light, her injury did not improve. It could only be said that her injury had been so serious that it could not spontaneously enter the positive circulation. Just like if a person suffered a minor injury, the body could heal itself. However, if the injury was too serious, the loss of life would be far higher than the body's production capacity, even higher than the speed of treatment, which was incurable. Right now, Lu Li's situation was similar to this. Although the wound was not big, the damage inside was very serious, to the extent that it could not be healed at all. That dagger is indeed an ancient artifact. In addition to the poison attached to it, the structure of the dagger's blade is also very vicious. Look at the blade, there are very fine forks on it, and they form a destructive structure with each other. When it enters the body, it can quickly kill the vitality, just like a vicious curse. Speaking of this, Xueqi gritted his teeth and said, "That bastard is really cunning. Even if I get the antidote, I have to go all out to keep Lioli alive. I can't even relax a little. How vicious." Wang Lu waved his hand. "There's no need to argue with a dead person. Concentrate on the current problem." While speaking, his brows furrowed, and his mind tried to recall what he learned in the Tang Cloud Hall. Every book on healing that he had read in the past 10 years of cultivation emerged one by one in Wang Lu's mind. After a long while, Wang Lu said, "Lioli's problem is that her injury is too serious, and she lost too much vitality. The essence of the healing spell of Zen is to stimulate one's own vitality. If one's own vitality is insufficient, the Zen method can't be used without rice. Since that's the case, how about directly supplementing her innate vitality?" Wang Lu said, "Although it's difficult to share the innate vitality of different people, Zen has the art of salvation, and all living beings are equal, so there should be a related spell, right?" Xueqi frowned and said, "I can. But right now, I'm just a doppelganger. I have the king pill and the body, but I don't have the innate vitality." I know. Moreover, how could I ask you to contribute your innate vitality for this kind of thing? I'm going to catch several Beast Master School bastards to sacrifice their lives." With that, Wang Lu got up and was about to start the fight again, but he was quickly stopped by Xueqi. "Wait a minute. Lu Li's brilliant sword heart and physique are pure. Ordinary people's innate vitality is turbid for her, which is harmful to her." Wang Lu asked, "Then what kind of innate vitality is needed to meet the standard? Is Pai Mu 2.5 less than 50? Or do you want to make a purifier?" Xueqi glanced at Wang Lu and somewhat helplessly said, "In addition to having a high enough cultivation base and a pure enough method, it also needs to be a virgin boy and a virgin girl." Virgin. Wang Lu was suddenly stunned. He then looked up at the noisy group of Beast Master School cultivators on the Crown Cloud Peak, and then turned his head back. With a complex look he sighed. "My mood right now is very delicate." Xueqi wryly smiled. "I can understand." To directly introduce other people's innate vitality into Lu Li's body, not only the quality of the innate vitality is very high, the quantity requirement is also very astonishing, because the consumption in the middle would be very astonishing. Wang Lu interrupted, "It doesn't matter. Saving people is more important. I can afford the price." Seven looked at him and said softly, "Does it matter even if it takes 100 years? Wang Lu gawked. 100 years? Is there a need to be so exaggerated? But then without hesitation he said, 100 years is 100 years. Just take it. While speaking, he stretched out his hand and pressed the wound on Lu Li's back. However, the touch was stiff and cold, causing Wang Lu to frown. Not long ago, the girl's body was as soft as jade, but now, it was full of rotten death orach. Bastards of the beast taming school, this matter will not end here. However, although Wang Lu was ready to lose 100 years of his lifespan, Xueqi couldn't make his move. You've always been shrewd. You should know what losing 100 years of lifespan means, right? Now that your cultivation base has reached shoot-on stage, your lifespan is only 300 years. Even if non-phase method has the ability to prolong your lifespan, it's only limited to 500 years. Losing 1/5 of your lifespan is not only 100 years, It will also have a serious impact on your immortal cultivation. It's very likely that you will encounter a great bottleneck in the future. Wang Lu disdainfully said, if there's a bottleneck, then I'll just break through it. How could a dignified void spirit root be afraid of a bottleneck? Losing 100 years of lifespan in one go, perhaps. It will reduce the quality of your spirit root, causing irreparable impact. Does that not matter? It doesn't matter. Saving Lu Li is the first priority. In any case, I'm a professional adventurer. Who am I afraid of? What's more, my void spirit root is not enough to deceive me. If the quality of my spirit root declines, then so be it. At worst, I'll just walk the path of mortal cultivation, so I won't necessarily be worried to death. Seeing that Wang Lu's will was incomparably firm, Xueqi inwardly sighed with emotion. The master and disciple of Non-Phase Peak were really carved from the same mold. Usually, they were so cheap that they wished they could beat them to death, but in critical times, they were more reliable than anyone else. This kid was young, but he already had the demeanor of his master. Perhaps, losing 100 years of lifespan was an opportunity for him to make a breakthrough? However, just as he was about to make his move, he suddenly heard a faint woman's voice. Use mine. Xueqi turned his eyes in surprise and saw that the cat girl Ling Yan, who had been unconscious after being severely injured by Quan Zuohua, had opened her eyes and weakly but firmly said, all of this was caused by me, so naturally, I should make up for my mistake. If innate vitality can save her, no matter how much, I'm willing to pay. Xueqi's complexion was complicated. You, the cat girl said, although I've been tortured by a xia for decades, according to your human standards, I am still a virgin. Wang Lu laughed. What kind of green tea setting is this? Obviously, you've been defiled by a xia for decades, but you're still a virgin. Only your nostrils and ears are still virgins. You, a xia is withered. Wang Lu's smile froze, and then he awkwardly touched his nose. You continue, I won't interrupt. Use mine. My innate vitality will definitely meet your needs. Moreover, please give me a chance to atone for my sins. With that, the cat girl's voice became more and more miserable, full of self-blame and remorse. I've personally hurt the person I love the most. Now, I really want to die. Xueqi said, at that time, you had no choice, so it's not your fault. Moreover, since you have the heart, I believe Lu Li will forgive you. As for the innate vitality, your quality is far from Wang Lu's. If he wants 100 years, you may want more. Even if you're a spirit beast in human form, and your natural lifespan is longer than human beings, you still can't bear it. Unfortunately, Xueqi's consolation had no effect at all. The cat girl's figure suddenly moved, and like a lightning, she rushed to Lu Li's side. The two arms that were bitten off by Quan Zuohua were bleeding at the same time. She then pressed the severed arms on Lu Li's back, letting her blood flow directly to Lu Li's wound. After a moment, the blood seemed to be burning, flashing with platinum light. You? Xueqi was taken aback. The cat girl actually forcibly burned her innate vitality. She didn't give other people the opportunity to stop her. Thus, in addition to receiving her overflowing innate vitality as soon as possible, there was no other way. He couldn't let her self-sacrifice go to waste. In desperation, Xueqi hastily operated his Zen technique and used the method of expiation to pour Ling Yan's innate vitality into Lu Li's body. With the influx of vitality, the gray color on Lu Li's wound quickly faded, and her originally stiff body gradually recovered its vitality. Lu Li's vitality was recovering at an alarming rate, but correspondingly, the cat girl was weakening at an alarming rate. A cultivator's innate vitality was extremely precious. Even if the cat girl had reached the peak of King Pill stage, it was impossible for her to squander her innate vitality at will. With the rapid loss of vitality, her body shrank at a speed visible to the naked eye. Her human characteristics gradually degenerated, and the cat characteristics gradually strengthened. A moment later, her whole body almost shrunk by half. The whiskers on her cheeks became longer, her pair of cat ears became more conspicuous, and behind her thighs grew a hairy tail. This was the spirit beast's reverse form transformation. When its life was extremely exhausted, the transformed spirit beast might instinctively revert to its original beast form, using its wildness to prolong its life. However, once this process occurred, it meant that its original 100 years of bitter cultivation might be completely wasted. Once it completely reverted to its beast form, it would never be able to successfully transform its human form in this lifetime. The cat girl's repentance was so firm that she didn't hesitate to sacrifice her life. For a time, Xueqi couldn't bear it, but what could she do? Did she really want Wang Lu to sacrifice his 100 years of lifespan? How could she even open her mouth? But at this moment, Wang Lu shook his head and took the initiative to stretch out his hand. That's enough. What will she do when she wakes up like this? As he spoke, Wang Lu gently placed his hand on the cat girl's shoulder. A similar platinum light shone, and the cat girl's body trembled. The transfer of innate vitality was forced to stop. Wang Lu directly sent his vitality into the cat girl's body, which was like a vast ocean, extinguishing her spontaneous flames. Before the cat girl could ignite her vitality again, Xueqi directly swung the Buddhist staff and knocked her unconscious to the ground. Wang Lu stepped forward and took over the cat girl's position. Heh, it's better for me to do this kind of thing. If I let a stupid cat save the world, how can I, as the senior brother, show my face? As he spoke, his forehead was already dripping with sweat. Releasing innate vitality was not easy for Wang Lu. But at this moment, a creature that had been ignored for a long time quietly spoke. Everything in this world started because of me, so let me end it. While Wang Lu and Xueqi were stunned, the immortal beast-like cocoon not far away shone brightly. Chapter 213. The existence of the immortal beast moon spirit had indeed been ignored for a long time. After Wang Lu summoned the spirits of all living things on the Grand Cloud Mountain to break through Tiger King's blockade, the Emperor essence spread all over the Grand Cloud Mountain, and the immortal beast moon spirit also took this opportunity to start the transformation process. It absorbed the moonlight, built a cocoon of light, curled itself up in it, and slowly transformed. For a common spirit beast, the transformation process had to go through the heavenly tribulation. Cultivation itself was against the heaven's will, not to mention the transformation from beast to human. Of course, after the end of the Age of Chaos, the intensity of the heavenly tribulation was not that high. As long as one was adequately prepared, there was usually nothing that could not be overcome. Cat girl Ling Yan's innate talent could be considered excellent. When she transformed, she had to withstand 3 strikes of Gung-Jin Divine Thunder and successfully broke through the bottleneck. However, when it came to the level of immortal beast, even the heavenly tribulation was omitted. Perhaps for the heaven's will, the transformation of the immortal beast was the heaven's will, and there was no need to obstruct it. Therefore, the transformation process of the Grand Cloud Mountain's moon spirit was very smooth and quiet. So much so that when the situation was urgent, Wang Lu and the others even subconsciously ignored the immortal beast around them. Until this time, the immortal beast moon spirit took the initiative to issue its own voice. Everything in this world started because of me, so let me end it. As the light and ethereal voice sounded in the full moon valley, the cocoon of light shone brightly. Although Wang Lu's eyes had undergone special training, they were still dazzled by the light. However, he could still vaguely see the outline of a beautiful woman. He slowly walked toward Lu Li and reached out his hand to gently touch her wound. Almost in an instant, the death aura in Lu Li's body was completely expelled. Full of vitality, like the sunshine, penetrated into every corner of her body. Lu Li uttered a cry as her injury was completely healed. However, she was still asleep and didn't immediately resuscitation. As Lu Li was completely out of danger, the light of the moon spirit quickly converged, revealing its true appearance. Wang Lu stared dumbfoundedly at the successfully transformed moon spirit in front of him. Even though he was experienced and knowledgeable, for a moment, he didn't know what to say. After the moon spirit transformed, it was just as Wang Lu had expected. She was an extremely beautiful and refined young girl. She looked to be about 16 or 17 years old, and her eyebrows were 80 to 90% similar to Fairy Yun Tai. However, she was more vigorous than Yun Tai, and her eyes also carried an irrepressible curiosity and quick-wittedness. After withdrawing the light, the girl wore an intoxicating smile and said to Wang Lu, "Thank you." It was rare for Wang Lu to calm down. He coughed, cleared his throat and then said, "You're welcome. I have an agreement with Grand Cloud Fairy, so these are all things that I should do. It's just that. Don't you want to wear some clothes?" Moon Spirit, who had just finished transforming, naturally maintained its original state, completely naked. Her voluptuous chest, slender waist, and plump buttocks all outlined a perfect curve. Her figure was slender and graceful. Of course, the most fascinating and sensitive part of a woman's body could also be seen at a glance. As a professional adventurer, Wang Lu would never feel cramped because of a mere nude woman. However, he also had to admit that Moon Spirit's flawless figure was by no means as simple as mere nude woman. Her soul-stirring beauty, even with his non-phase immortal heart, could not help but palpitate with eagerness. Moon Spirit gawked for a moment. She innocently and lightly walked around in front of Wang Lu. "Don't I look good? Why do you look so embarrassed?" Wang Lu said. "I remember that Grand Cloud Fairy's white dress is whiter than snow. How come it turned into the Emperor's white dress?" Moon Spirit said with a smile. "Mom said that the clothes on her body symbolize the bondage of the world of mortals. She hopes that I can live freely in the future, so I think I shouldn't wear clothes, right? But since you think it's not suitable, it seems that there's a big difference between my perception and reality, then." The girl raised her hand, and the sensitive part of her body lit up with white light, blocking the sight of others. "Unexpectedly, you're from the Holy Light Party." Wang Lu couldn't help but laugh in spite of himself. Seeing that the girl was determined, he no longer tried to persuade her. In any case, the other party was willing to give out benefits, so why should he stop her? Let's quickly display the good student's photographic memory and remember as much as we can. At the beginning of the human form transformation, the immortal beast was ignorant of worldly affairs, ignorant of human feelings, pure as a white paper. However, looking at her demeanor, she was not like Lu Li and Quan Zhouhua who gave up treatment. When she was in her immortal beast form, she was still mainly beastly. However, after her human form, her mind was enlightened, and her rationality grew. After 3 to 5 days, she would be familiar with the rules, and naturally she would have a sense of shame. At that time, there would be no such beautiful scenery. However, this trip to the Grand Cloud Mountain had finally come to an end. Moon Spirit had taken human form, and the enemies were all dead. Basically, everything that could be done had been done. Now, as long as they could bring Moon Spirit back to the mountain, this experiential learning trip would be a success. And in order to avoid a long delay, they would directly use the Heavenly Talisman. Although the value of the Spirit Sword Heavenly Talisman was not cheap, compared to the immortal beast, it was just a drop in the bucket. Thus, Wang Lu didn't hesitate to use it. He took out the Heavenly Talisman from his mustard seed bag. It was a glittering and translucent, jade-like talisman, which was carefully written with thousands of characters. Each character contained a mysterious power. The lower half of the talisman was left blank, which was the place where the user left his own mark. Once the mark was left on the Heavenly Talisman, as long as one was within 100 meters of the Heavenly Talisman, he would be pulled into the transmission array and sent to the designated location. Currently, only Wang Lu, Lu Li, and Quan Zhouhua were left on the Spirit Sword Heavenly Talisman. Now, it needed the cat girl, Xueqi, and Moon Spirit to leave their names on it. A Heavenly Talisman could transport 10 people, so there were still a lot of empty spots. Seeing this life-saving Spirit Sword Heavenly Talisman, Xueqi couldn't help but sigh with emotion. "In the past, when I was traveling with your master, she always talked about this thing for a long time. She said that if she had this Spirit Sword Heavenly Talisman to save her life, she would dare to explore the 9 regions. Unfortunately, I've never seen her collect enough sect points." Wang Lu snorted disdainfully. That poor girl almost sold her kidney every day. If not because the sect leader pitied her and gave her an elder's tribute every month, she would have held the 99% sign and went to the mysterious sky mansion to block the door. Xueqi left his own unique mark on the Heavenly Talisman and said with a smile, "Don't slander her like that. Although her personality is indeed a bit, but she's actually very good at making money." Wang Lu was surprised. Very good at making money? Could it be that there are people in the Onxian League who buy moral integrity at a high price? No, she's actually very business-minded. She's made a lot of money in several businesses. However, while she's good at making money, she's also good at spending money. She's not the same as you, her cultivation consumption is very terrifying, so, while explaining with a smile, Xueqi picked up the cat girl, who was in a trance because of burning her innate vitality. He pulled out a strand of her whiskers, and when the cat girl meowed in pain, he melted the whiskers into a stream of pure magical power and left 2 words on the Heavenly Talisman: Spirit Smoke. Finally, only Moon Spirit was left. The girl looked at the Heavenly Talisman. Although I don't understand what it is, it looks very powerful. What is it used for? To take you away from this place and back to my spirit sword mountain. Away from here. The girl looked up and softly asked, "This is my home. But there are evil guests wreaking havoc in your home, while my great spirit sword mountain has beautiful scenery, fragrant flowers, rich spiritual energy, and big fish and meat." Xueqi said, "Hey, isn't this not neat at all?" The girl's interest was obviously aroused. Is it a very interesting place? Of course it is. Moreover, Grand Cloud Fairy doesn't want you to be trapped in the Grand Cloud Mountain. The world is big. You can travel everywhere. The girl vigorously nodded. I understand. Mom said you're a trustworthy person, so I'll go with you. So, do you want me to leave a mark on the heavenly talisman? How do I do that? Wang Lu said, add a bit of innate vitality to your real name. Well, your real name must be a name that resonates with your heart. I remember that Grand Cloud Fairy left you the name Xueqi, so you still lack a surname. Why don't you take my surname Wang? Moon Spirit shook her head. No, I want my surname to be Bai. As you wish. Wang Lu indifferently handed over the heavenly talisman, waiting for the other party to condense the mark. The girl named by Xueqi gently shook her finger and began to condense her own mark. This immortal beast transformation was really an innate magical ability. Generally speaking, people who had never condensed their original life mark would need at least a period of time to integrate their real name into their innate vitality, and then combine the two to form a mark. However, Bai Xueqi waved her hand and the mark was formed, looking like a crescent white moon. However, just as Bai Xueqi was about to integrate the mark into the heavenly talisman, Xueqi's complexion suddenly changed. He waved his monk staff in the air. The next moment, the monk staff issued a buzzing sound, and the Zen light was like a covering half of the sky in the full moon valley. However, in an instant, the Zen light was pierced and crushed by a sharp beam of light. Xueqi let out a muffled groan, staggered back a few steps, and his 7 orifices overflowed with blood. That beam of light was blocked by Xueqi's Zen technique, but as if it was alive, halfway through, it once again accelerated to stab Wang Lu. Wang Lu instinctively retracted his right hand that was holding the heavenly talisman, only to feel a burst of pain in his hand. A few of his fingers had been cut off, but fortunately, the heavenly talisman was not damaged. However, the crisis had already arrived, and the drama was about to come to an end, but now there was another wave. Despite Wang Lu's good mentality, he could not help but feel a bit anxious. In particular, that spell just now, its momentum was fierce and overbearing, and its power was incomparably great. Moreover, its magical power seemed to have a life of its own, which was a typical characteristic of a Yuanying stage cultivator. Moreover, it was a Yuanying stage cultivator whose cultivation base was even higher than Tiger King. Don't even think about leaving. Along with a roar that shook the valley, a dark cloud came from afar, blotting out the sky. Although it was far away, the clouds revealed a majestic aura that suppressed all living beings, which made people breathless. Wang Lu struggled to look up, trying to see through the dark cloud. However, what was reflected in his line of sight were thousands of strange phenomena. In the dark cloud, there seemed to be 10,000 beasts galloping, thunder and lightning, and there was a storm. Wang Lu quickly shook his head. His non-phase immortal heart floated high above his jade mansion, and then, together with his primordial spirit, void core, and non-phase emperor bone, he got rid of the erosion of these strange phenomena. My goodness, peak Yuanying stage. Raising his hand and lifting his foot, there was a strange phenomenon, and his primordial spirit could invade and disturb people's heart. All of these showed that the cultivation base of the person who came had reached the peak Yuanying stage. His heart was the will of the heaven, so there were dark clouds blotting out the sun, and there were strange phenomena. At the same time, his primordial spirit was highly released, and there was a faint tendency for it to multiply, so that people who touched it would be disturbed. In the entire Onxian League, this kind of cultivation base could be regarded as quite an expert. If one only considered cultivation base, the elders of the Heavenly Sword Hall of Spirit Sword Mountain were also at this level. However, the person who came was naturally not an elder of Spirit Sword Mountain. A moment later, the dark cloud dissipated, revealing a dignified and solemn elder. That person was dressed in black, and his whole body was surrounded by thunder and flame. His 2 thick arms were crossed in front of his chest, and his arms were covered with black scales, which made him look even more ferocious. Xueqi sucked in a mouthful of cold air. Beast Master School's disciplinary elder? Chapter 214. The Disciplinary Elder? Hearing Xueqi's exclamation, Wang Lu's heart sank. The position of disciplinary elder, in an ordinary sect, was ranked among the top 5 great elders. Their strength and status were far superior to Tiger King Lei Zhen, this kind of small feudal lord. To put it simply, they were the leaders from the central government. If in the face of Tiger King, Wang Lu could still use various means to win a slim chance of survival, but in the face of a peak Yuanying stage great elder, no matter how confident he was, it was difficult to say that he had a chance of winning. However, all of this was not too difficult to understand. In terms of the value of the immortal beast, it was not unusual for the great elder of the Beastmaster School in the Southern Heaven region to be alarmed. Previously, Wang Lu inferred that with Tiger King Lei Zhen's temperament, he would never easily let the great elder of the Beastmaster School in the Southern Heaven region get involved in such a big benefit. But now that Tiger King was dead, it just gave the great elder of the Beastmaster School an excuse to intervene. Wang Lu has tried his best not to waste time. After Moon Spirit resuscitation, he immediately prepared to leave the heavenly talisman and run away. While chatting along the way, his hands were not delayed, but unexpectedly, he was still too late. Sure enough, the greater the benefit, the greater the risk. In the face of such a strong crisis, Wang Lu, while trying to think of countermeasures, asked, Seventh Madam, I urgently need help." But he heard Xueqi with a complex expression said with a wry smile, "I'm afraid I'm not a suitable person to ask for help. Right now, I'm just an avatar. Even if you ask me, I can't do anything. Don't forget, he is the Beastmaster School's disciplinary elder." Wang Lu immediately understood. Beastmaster School's cultivators often have spirit beasts as companions. This disciplinary elder seemed to be alone, but how could he not have a spirit beast? Xueqi was only a middle-grade king pill. Even if she risked her life, she could only focus on one opponent. If the other side fought separately, she would not be able to attend to one thing and lose sight of another. It was impossible for her to give Wang Lu enough time to let Bai Shixian leave her mark and activate the heavenly talisman. Damn it, this is an endless loop. Wang Lu furrowed his brows. Even though he was intelligent, he still felt that this was a thorny problem. Time passed bit by bit, but he knew that under the suppression of a peak nascent soul cultivator, no matter how much time passed, it would be difficult for him to find an opportunity to place a mark on the moon spirit. If I had known this would happen, I would have let Shixian be the first to imprint the mark. Xueqi was quite upset. She was just a doppelganger. Even if she died, she would only encounter a slight obstacle on the path of personal ability enhancement. Why did she have to be the first to leave a mark? Hearing this, Wang Lu said, "How could they let Qinyang sacrifice herself like this? Moreover, the other party has already arrived at the Yuntai mountain and waited for this moment." Just as he finished speaking, the black-clothed elder in the sky nodded and said, "That's right. You guys can leave, but leave the immortal beast behind." That's right, he was waiting for everyone to leave their mark and only Moon Spirit was left before he made his move. In this way, he should be glad that he left Bai Shixian until the end, otherwise there would be more people who couldn't escape. Wang Lu narrowed his eyes. His brain turned rapidly, and at the same time, he opened his mouth and said, Shut up. There's no room for you to bargain or show off your cleverness here. I'm only letting you scram for the sake of the Lingjian school behind you. Otherwise, you would have unscrupulously destroyed my Beastmaster School's division's territory. Even if I wanted you to be hacked into pieces." The black-clothed elder didn't put Wang Lu in his eyes at all. Even if he was the famous Lingjian School's peerless genius several years ago, at this moment, he was just a shoot-on-stage ant. His innate aptitude was far inferior to Wang Lu's, but with just a thought, he could kill him. As for the Lingjian School, the Wanxian League's 5 uniques indeed couldn't be underestimated, but the Beastmaster School wasn't someone who could be easily bullied. Not to mention the matter of the Yuntai Mountain, no matter where it was, the Beastmaster School was in the right. The Yuntai Mountain was the Beastmaster School's territory. Wang Lu and the others clearly came to make trouble. Even if he killed them on the spot, it was still reasonable. Of course, the ownership of the Yuntai Mountain hasn't been fully recognized by the Wanxian League. However, in recent years it had long been under the actual control. This was the unwritten rule of the Wanxian League, so the black-clothed elder didn't feel that he had anything to be afraid of. Even if the Lingjian school wanted to stir up trouble in the future, the head of the Beastmaster school would come forward. He came from the Southern Heaven region under the instruction of the head of the Beastmaster school. If Tiger King Lei Zhan was still here, perhaps it would be inconvenient for him to interfere. After all, although Lei Zhan's cultivation base wasn't too high, his popularity in the sect was still good. He paid a huge price to come to the Cloud region, just for this immortal beast. If he didn't let it go, the sect wouldn't be able to directly snatch it. Now that Lei Zhan was dead, he came forward to clean up the situation. Wang Lu and the others could go, but the immortal beast Moon Spirit must stay. Wang Lu saw that the other party's attitude was completely unfavorable, and his heart sank. The other party clearly wanted to ignore all the rules and use their fists to talk. As far as he was concerned, there was nothing he could do. I'll count to 3. Either you get the hell out of here or you die here. After the black-clothed elder finished speaking, the black scales on his arms suddenly moved and turned into 2 pitch-black flood dragons. They wandered around his whole body, and from time to time, they revealed a fierce look towards Wang Lu and the others. My goodness, 2 flood dragons as pets. He's really worthy to be the central leader of the Beastmaster school. Wang Lu clenched his teeth. He really couldn't find any opportunity. 1. The ice-cold counting sound resounded throughout the valley. The disciplinary elder of the Beastmaster school released more magical power, and the thunder fire around his body became several times more violent. With the nourishment of the thunder fire, the 2 flood dragons' bodies also fiercely swelled up, and their faces became more ferocious. From time to time, they would spit out lightning, which hit the surrounding rocks of the Full Moon Valley, igniting a mountain fire. What a hateful evil beast! Seeing the Full Moon Valley on fire everywhere, Bai Shixian couldn't help but frown and softly expressed her disgust. She was the daughter of the Grand Cloud Fairy, the current spirit of the Grand Cloud Mountain. The Flood Dragon's demonstration action brought harm to the mountain, which was like an injury to her body. However, at this time compared to the mountain fire, there were more important things to pay attention to. Wang Lu, I can't go, can I? Bai Shixian looked at the dark clouds in the sky and lightly asked. Wang Lu sighed. You really gave me a good problem. While speaking, his heart began to calculate. If he didn't hesitate to burn his innate vitality and cast out the immature innate non-phase diamond sword, would he be able to withstand 1 or 2 moves from a peak Yuanying stage cultivator? Or awaken Lu Li and combine their swords? From a professional adventurer's point of view, Bai Shixian's problem was without any suspense. She indeed couldn't go. However, such an answer was completely unacceptable to Wang Lu. While he was pondering, he saw Bai Shixian turned around and smiled. Wang Lu, thank you. Wang Lu asked. What are you thanking me for? Bai Shixian blinked her eyes and explained. Because you let me experience the feeling of freedom, which Mom said is the most precious treasure. She said that she is the spirit of the Grand Cloud Mountain. This mountain gave her life, but it also gave her shackles. I am luckier than her. I cannot be bound by the mountain, but I am also more unfortunate than her, because I would be coveted by the mortal world's greed, and it's very likely that I would be taken away just as I mature. But because of you, at least from the moment of transformation until now, I think I am free. In the silence, the cold countdown from the sky once again sounded. 2. The 2 black flood dragons greedily swallowed the spiritual energy of heaven and earth of the Grand Cloud Mountain. Along with the catalysis of the thunder fire of the black-clothed elder, their bodies further expanded. In the blink of an eye, they turned into a giant creature like a small mountain. This kind of flood dragon, which was about to cross the heavenly tribulation, was a magical beast with enough power to destroy the world in many myths and legends. Ordinary cultivators, even if they were at the peak of the King Pill stage, would not be able to last more than 2 or 3 moves in front of them. The 2 flood dragons moved together, the dark clouds in the sky rolled, lightning and thunder rumbled, as if the vault of heaven was collapsing, and the end of the world was coming. The several people in the Full Moon Valley were like duckweed in a stormy sea, completely without the ability to resist. However, Bai Shixian turned a blind eye to everything in the sky, and the young girl's smile was still bright. Although the time is not long, I think I will always remember the taste of freedom. At this time, that black-clothed elder coldly said, remember? Wait until I put the beast-taming trap on your neck. You will not remember anything. Not ever. Bai Shixian turned a deaf ear to him, and just smiled as she asked Wang Lu. You will come to pick me up, right? Wang Lu only felt that his throat was somewhat blocked, and he really didn't know what to say. Yes, he was a cultivator with heavenly spirit root, and his talent in immortal cultivation was unprecedented. One day, he would be stronger than anyone. At that time, the entire beast taming school would not be able to withstand a single punch from him. But what was the use of that? The blue sea turned into mulberry fields. How many one day were there in life? There will come a day. This was the most worthless sentence of all. Bai Shixian had not been in human form for long, but she was exceptionally intelligent, and had already clearly understood her own situation. Now, what she said to Wang Lu was actually to comfort him. She comforted him by saying, "You have done a very good job, and there is still a chance to redeem yourself in the future. So don't be sad, and don't make irrational choices." Wang Lu closed his eyes, and his heart sighed with emotion. "Little Bai, you're still a bit tender. With you comforting him like this, how could he possibly leave?" And just as Wang Lu and Bai Shixian were speechless, the impatient elder finally dropped the last word. 3. At the end of the count, the two flood dragons were like heavenly thunder descending to the world, wrapped in thick dark clouds, as well as the angry thunder from the clouds, pouring down. However, the black-robed elder still had some misgivings. Although the flood dragons had the power to destroy the world, their momentum was not fast, giving Wang Lu and the others a short period of time, allowing him to clearly consider whether to die here, or wisely launch the heavenly talisman. Of course, if Wang Lu didn't know what was good for him, and tried to use this short period of time to play some tricks, the reaction speed of a peak Yuanian cultivator was much faster than that of a Shudan. The time that the black-robed elder gave was not long, but for Wang Lu, it was like 100 years had passed. Under the incomparably harsh and oppressive environment, as well as the extreme emotional fluctuations, he felt that his primordial spirit, Emperor Bone, Shudan, Immortal Heart, had an unprecedented high degree of integration, and with the help of his innate vitality, a subtle reaction occurred. At this moment, time seemed to stop. Thousands of thoughts flashed through Wang Lu's mind, and each thought was clear and distinct. His sense of the surrounding spiritual energy had become thousands of times more sensitive, and within a radius of 100 meters, he was aware of every fluctuation of spiritual energy. Looking at the seemingly still spiritual energy, Wang Lu even vaguely felt that he could predict the direction of the movement of these spiritual energy. At the same time, in Wang Lu's eyes, the two flood dragons' thunderbolt attack was no longer a deadly move. In the thick dark clouds, there was a vague flaw, a glimmer of hope. Perhaps in terms of probability, the possibility of defying the natural order was only 1 in 1,000, or even 1 in 10,000, but ultimately, there was hope. Therefore, without hesitation, Wang Lu began to move. He inhaled and exhaled magical power, and with a subtle rhythm, he led the surrounding spiritual energy to surge and resonate. His innate vitality also burned, ready to integrate the energy in his body to make a life-risking blow. As long as this blow could be stopped for a moment. Bai Shixian was not stupid. She naturally knew how to seize the opportunity to leave her mark, and then activate the heavenly talisman, so that everyone could escape. All she needed was a moment. When Wang Lu burst out his unprecedentedly powerful sword qi, the sleeping Lu Li suddenly responded on her own. The empty and bright sword qi was dispersed by her and turned into a thin mist, which tightly combined with Wang Lu's magical power, making the final push for the eruption of Wang Lu's magical power. Time was incomparably long. Wang Lu clearly saw the sudden change in the complexion of the black-clothed elder above the clouds. He clearly saw the two flood dragons, upon receiving the order, burst out with bloodthirsty madness, and no longer held back their attack. He clearly saw the millions and millions of spiritual energy around him groaning and breaking under the pressure of the dark clouds. He clearly saw that in his jade mansion, the half-real and half-illusory void core emitted a blazing golden light. Under the quenching of the innate non-phase sword qi, it became twice as thick and indestructible as before. It was as if a ray of light flashed through Wang Lu's mind. Although the result was still unclear, although the dark clouds in the sky still seemed unstoppable, he had enough confidence that he could win. He could definitely block this sword strike. The next moment, when the two forces were about to collide with each other. On the horizon, the golden light tore through the dark clouds, and an emerald green sword light, like a meteor, flew from the horizon faster than lightning, traversing across the world where time was almost stagnant. The emerald green sword light was faster than anyone could imagine. In an instant, it arrived at the center of the battlefield. The sword light went up and faced the pair of ferocious flood dragons head-on. The earth-shattering sound swept across the sky, shaking everyone until the sky and earth turned upside down. A buzzing sound filled their minds. The two ferocious flood dragons turned into black powder without any struggle and disappeared without a trace. The black-clothed elder in the sky screamed and fell diagonally. "Reckless thing! You dare to rob my non-phase peak's immortal beast?" The fifth elder's white dress was as bright as the sun. In the full moon valley, she looked like a deity. Chapter 2:15. All along, in Wang Lu's mind, his master's image had never been that of an expert. Although from a rational point of view, as the founder of non-phase method, a peak gene dance stage cultivator, Wang Lu himself should be the clearest about how powerful Wang Wu was with her more than 100 layers of non-phase method. However, since he became her disciple, the image that Wang Wu showed in front of her disciple was really unbearable. Most of the time in non-phase peak, she had nothing to do. She had the image of a drunken woman. Occasionally, she would be chased by Lu Xian, Feng He, and other elders, forcing her to flee like a stray dog. In the past 10 years, the only time he saw her fight seriously was with Taoist Master Jifeng of Shengjing sect. However, she played down that fight and didn't really show her real skill. Not to mention that although Jifeng's stage was high, he wasn't good at fighting. Trampling on this kind of minion didn't prove her ability. Then today, Wang Lu finally opened his eyes. The screaming black-clad elder who fell from the sky was by no means an ordinary person. His peak Yuanying stage cultivation base, his two fierce and belligerent flood dragon spirit pets, as well as that pitch-black spiritual treasure-level leather coat, all showed his power as a high-rank sex disciplinary elder. This was a genuine peak Yuanying stage cultivator. Even in the entire immortal cultivation world of 9 regions, he was still an out-and-out expert. However, in the blink of an eye, his two spirit pets were destroyed by Wang Wu's emerald green bamboo sword. Even he himself suffered a backlash from the magical power, which nearly shattered his Yuanying. His miserable and abject image doubled the contrast of Wang Wu's awe-inspiring power. How to establish an expert's image the fastest? It was very simple: beat other experts into dog shit, and then you would be an expert. And at this time, Wang Wu was undoubtedly an out-and-out master. Wang Lu's non-phase diamond sword, which he had gathered all the energy in his body, failed. Although he promptly withdrew part of his magical power, he still felt a burst of soreness and powerlessness. Especially after the life and death crisis was resolved, his heart relaxed, but he also felt exhausted. Wang Lu was mentally exhausted, but it was difficult to suppress the joy that welled up in his heart after the big turn. He looked up at the sky and saw his master, who was wearing a white dress and holding a bamboo sword, disdainfully looking down on all living beings in the full moon valley. The light of the king pill was like the sun shining in all directions, making it difficult for people to look straight at it. A moment later, Wang Lu sighed as he tried to stare at the golden light with his strong eyesight. Master is also a member of the Holy Light Party. However, his slight lament was quickly suppressed by a cold voice. "Xiaobo, I haven't seen you for more than 20 years. You've really become capable." Over the full moon valley, Wang Wu's cold sneer was like the howling cold wind, freezing people's hearts. The black-clothed elder fell from the sky. At this moment, his hands were holding onto a rock wall, barely supporting his body. Hearing this, his face darkened, and a trace of blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. Wang Wu sneered and said, "Threatening my disciple, injuring my friend. These things don't matter." Wang Lu said, "I think it does matter." Wang Wu said, "But you actually have an idea on the head of my non-phase peak's immortal beast. Even if you die 100 times, you won't be able to redeem yourself." However, as soon as this remark came out, Xiao Bo's somewhat suppressed imposing manner suddenly rose up. This Yuanying stage elder, who was known for his fierceness, used his jade mansion to digest the injury, and at the same time, did not hesitate to consume his life's essence to enhance his imposing manner. He coldly said, "Your non-phase peak's immortal beast? What a joke." With that, he let go of the rock wall. Behind his black leather coat, a pair of pitch-black wings sprouted out, which slowly lifted him up into the air, keeping pace with Wang Wu. Grand Cloud Mountain is my Beast Master School's territory. The immortal Beast Moon Spirit is a creature of Grand Cloud Mountain, so naturally, it belongs to my Beast Master School. Your Lingjian School's people can forget about taking it by force and trickery. Wang Wu did not budge an inch. What a joke! Just because I was born on Grand Cloud Mountain, I should be your Beast Master School's property? Then I'm also on Grand Cloud Mountain. Do you want to take me as your slave? Wang Lu whispered. He didn't say slave. Wang Wu coldly snorted. Taking a beauty, if not slave. Then what else? Xiao Bo ignored the master and disciples' pestering and just said, for this immortal beast, Beast Master School has been planning for more than 5 years, and they have used countless manpower and material resources. Wang Wu laughed. Then this immortal beast immediately refused. Xiao Bo, don't make people laugh. Is spending a lot of manpower and material resources reasonable? There has never been such a rule in the immortal cultivation world. According to what you said, if one day a waste like you prepared 999 spiritual treasures to propose to me, would I agree to it? Wang Lu sighed. I think you will agree. Xiao Bo said, interesting. My Beast Master School painstakingly planned for many years, but I don't have the qualifications to be the immortal beast's master. Your Lingjian School's disciples just made a big fuss here, and you confidently want to take away the immortal beast. Wang Wu, you've been cultivating for more than 100 years, why don't you tell me? When has there ever been such a cheap thing in this world? Wang Wu smiled and said, in this world, there has never been a lack of people like you who rely on their wealth and power to take away their beloved. Most of the time, the story of lovers getting married is indeed just a story. I also don't think your Beast Master School's bastards will understand the beauty of helping others. But, so what? While speaking, Wang Wu's smile disappeared, and the emerald green bamboo sword in her hand became sharp. Today, I want to take away the immortal beast. If you have the ability, then come and stop me. Having spoken to this point, Xiao Bo also lost the interest to continue talking. The anger in his heart surged, and the thunder and fire around his body once again condensed. You shameless slut. Do you really think you have such a strong ability? Just now, I was unexpectedly attacked by you, so I was injured. Now I want to see what qualifications you, a mere king pill, have to speak loudly in front of me. Peak Yuanying stage was indeed peak Yuanying stage. Obviously, he was seriously injured, but in just a moment, Xiao Bo's injury had completely recovered. Once again, he displayed his astonishing means. The 2 flood dragons that were turned into powder by Wang Wu's non-phase sword were reborn from the fire and thunder around Xiao Bo. They swallowed the spiritual energy, absorbed the fire and thunder, and after a moment, grew back to their original size. At this time, the eyes of the 2 fierce beasts were full of vigilance. They hovered in the air, staring at Wang Wu, not daring to relax. Xiao Bo himself also changed. His black leather clothes turned into a shining metal armor, which wrapped his whole body. The shape of the armor looked very aggressive. The joints and other places were full of barbs and edges. Rather than saying it was an armor to protect its master, it was more like a fully covered weapon. 1 person and 2 pets were connected by thunder and fire, a trinity of magical ability, and their strength was far more powerful than when they were separated. Xiao Bo did not underestimate his opponent, but at this time, he brought out the full power of a peak Yuanying stage cultivator. He was confident that no king pill cultivator in this world could compete with him. 20 years ago, he did suffer a lot in the hands of Wang Wu. However, after more than 20 years, his cultivation base continued to grow, while the other party remained at the peak of king pill. She had long lost the capital to be arrogant. In this regard, Wang Wu curled her lips. I gave you face, but you don't want it. Just obediently go back. Using the excuse of being attacked as an excuse, you can't wait to come out and die. Very well. Then I will fulfill your wish. Wang Wu said and turned her palm. Suddenly, the thousands of grasses and trees inside and outside the full moon valley began to tremble. Then, thousands of green lights gathered from all directions and were turned into thousands of emerald green flying swords by Wang Wu's jade-like hands. These flying swords densely surrounded Wang Wu, forming an indestructible defensive sword array. Although the leader of this array was only a king pill cultivator, in front of the Yuanying stage black clouds and thunder and fire, it did not seem weak. Wang Wu's imposing manner was even more overbearing. Xiaobo, 20 years ago, you knelt in front of me and begged me to spare your life. Today, I will take back the old debt from 20 years ago. Xiaobo was furious. Empty talk. Dark clouds gathered, and one person and two dragons were hidden in the dark clouds without a trace. The dark clouds quickly spread out, as if to engulf the entire full moon valley. And inside the dark clouds, several fierce murderous intents firmly locked onto Wang Wu. The killing intent of a peak Yuanying stage cultivator was enough to break the heart defense of an ordinary king pill cultivator. But Wang Wu, who was inside the sword array, remained motionless. Master, you can do it. Below the valley, Wang Lu saw that the opportunity had come. While shouting encouragement, he quickly launched the heavenly talisman again, and at the same time, called by Xueqi to leave her mark. What a joke! Who said that Master must win against Xiaobo and completely suppress the situation before she could leave? Although that could indeed save a heavenly talisman, Wang Lu had already suffered enough of the suffering of a long night, so wasting a heavenly talisman was not a pity. It was rare that the attention of a peak Yuanying stage cultivator was completely removed from him. If he didn't leave now, then when would he leave? However, the moment when Wang Lu took out the heavenly talisman, a dark shadow quietly sprang out from his side. Like an assassination dagger in the shadow, it went straight to the heavenly talisman in Wang Lu's hand. That dark shadow was actually Xiaobo himself, who was fully armored. He covered the battlefield with dark clouds. On the surface, it seemed like he was going to fight to the death with Wang Wu, but his brain was not disabled. How could he not distinguish the priority? At this time, the most important thing was to stop the immortal beast moon spirit, not to argue with Wang Wu about victory or defeat. Not to mention that Wang Wu's non-phase sword defense was notoriously hard. Don't look at her cultivation base of King Pill. Her 3 feet sword defense was difficult to break even for a Yuanying stage cultivator. What was even more shocking was that behind the 3 feet sword defense, there was still 1 foot sword defense, 3-inch sword defense, and even 1-inch sword defense. Each layer was more indestructible than the previous one. The defensive power of this non-phase sword defense was simply incredible. He was confident that his strength was not something that an ordinary Yuanying stage cultivator could compare to. However, to say that he could break the opponent's multiple layers of sword defense in one breath, he was not confident enough. However, he had enough confidence that he could sneak attack Wang Wu's disciple when she was caught off guard. No matter how powerful Wang Wu was, when she set up her sword array and cast out her 3 feet sword defense, she was doomed to fail. Even if the non-phase sword defense was invincible, it could only protect him. What was the point? Now, in front of you, I injured your disciple and took away the immortal beast moon spirit. What can you do about it? Others might not know about the big heart demon oath, but how could he not know about it? Just now, I suffered a loss because I was caught off guard. Now that I am fully prepared, I will never give you a chance to take advantage of me. Through his primordial spirit, he ordered the flood dragon to entangle Wang Wu in the dark clouds no matter what. At the same time, he stretched out his hand toward the heavenly talisman. First, he broke the heavenly talisman, then he injured Wang Lu, then he took away the immortal beast moon spirit, and finally, he also had the beast-controlling heavenly talisman to return to the headquarters. However, the moment his palm touched the heavenly talisman, a hard impact force poured from his fingertips, bloomed and exploded in his body. It was almost the same force as when he tried to break the heavenly talisman, but it was twice as strong as his own strength. Caught off guard, his whole arm was blown to pieces. Xiaobo was hit by this impact force and staggered back, his face showing a look of disbelief. Who was it? Who was it that was able to block his sure kill blow? Just now, the counterattack force was clearly from the non-phase sword. Could it be Wang Lu? Impossible, he was just a shoot-on, he didn't even have time to react. How could he block the full power attack of a Taoist master of Yuanying stage? While his heart was in a mess, at this time, Wang Wu's voice faintly came from above. Xiaobo, what do you think of my 300-meter sword defense? 300-meter sword defense? Xiaobo felt his vision go black and almost vomited blood. This guy. When did the range of the non-phase sword expand to 300 meters? No, the bigger problem was that Wang Wu was restricted by the big heart demon oath. Even if this innate non-phase sword chi expanded to 30,000 meters, it should only be able to defend, so how could it injure him? The same question also lingered in Wang Lu's head. Just now, Xiaobo's sneak attack made him break out in a cold sweat, But after his master's invisible sword Qi broke out, he was relieved. But at the same time, he was also curious about this new trick of saving people and injuring the enemy. He himself was the clearest about the advantages and disadvantages of the non-phase method. With the restriction of the big heart demon oath, it had no ability to injure him from a distance, could it be? Wang Lu, don't you understand this? After a pause, Wang Wu explained, the spirit sword heavenly talisman is priceless, okay? You broke my heavenly talisman, which is like cutting my flesh and blood. I was justified in self-defense, so I was justified. What the? For a time, even Wang Lu was stunned by this wonderful explanation. Xiaobo couldn't help but spurt out a mouthful of blood. F***CKU, is there any justice in this world? Chapter 2:16. The older the ginger, the spicier. Seeing his master's unreasonable non-phase wealth protection sword Qi, Wang Lu was dumbfounded and could not help but fall into deep thought. If the inconceivably vast range of the sword Qi could be explained by her long cultivation time and profound skill, but to injure Xiaobo from a distance, that was another concept. The big heart demon oath did not allow for word games, let alone self-hypnosis. In order to vent the hatred in his heart, Wang Lu paid 30 years of his lifespan, but just now, his master's sword Qi was calm and unhurried, without the slightest hint of life-shortening. Of course, this was very unreasonable, but the fact had already happened, so rather than complaining about the reasonableness of it, it was better to find a reasonable explanation. And there were also a few such explanations. As a cultivator who also cultivated the non-phase method and walked the big heart demon oath, Wang Lu had seriously thought about how to make full use of the existing conditions and improve his strength under the restriction of the big heart demon oath. He believed that his master released this heaven-defying sword Qi in front of him because she wanted to teach him a lesson. Look, this is the road you have to take next. To achieve the effect of long-distance attack, the simplest way was to divide the body, to separate a part of the body, such as nails, hair, or even flesh and blood, and then cover this part of the body on the target that needed to be protected. When the other party touched the separated body, it would immediately rebound the damage. With the peak of the King Pill realm, long-distance control of the body was completely achievable. And for the cultivators of the Lingjian school, which focused on basic skills, they could even turn their body into a mist. Within a radius of hundreds of feet, their body would be there. If they dared to make a slight movement, they would kill them in the name of self-defense. But what his master did just now seemed to be a higher level than this. She didn't separate the body, but on the contrary, she included the spirit sword heavenly talisman into a range, and within that range, it belonged to her self-defense zone. Yes, this is an extension of the concept of me, which means that under the sky, everything belongs to the king. This is also a part of your cultivation that you have to experience sooner or later. In his mind, his master's voice rang out. On the path of cultivation, there's no such thing as being alone. No matter how carefree a person is, he or she will eventually meet someone or something that he or she treasures. If the enemy can't hurt you, they will turn around and hurt them. If you can't protect them, you will have to taste the feeling of living a life worse than death. I believe you have already experienced this. Wang Lu had nothing to say and could only smile helplessly. Just now, Lu Li was only seriously injured, but Wang Lu already felt his heart boiling. If she really fell because of that. You care a lot about Xiao Liuli? That's easy. You can't learn my move. All the land under the heavens belongs to the king yet. Your primordial spirit isn't condensed enough, but there's a folk recipe that can allow you to provide the strongest defense for Lu Li at any time. There's such a move? You should have taught him earlier. His master asked with great interest, are you sure? I'm talking about dual cultivation. As long as you and Lu Li have a yin and yang intercourse, and the spirit and body become one, the magical power of the non-phase method can be transmitted to her, and even share the damage for her. When others hurt her, you can also confidently defend and counterattack. Actually, among the sub-methods of the non-phase method, I'm most satisfied with this set of non-phase harmony method. Unfortunately, I haven't found a suitable target. Xiao Qi is introverted and shy, so no matter what, she's too embarrassed to practice with me. Therefore, I can only extract data from you. Wang Lu said. I'm ready to withdraw, you can slowly display your skill. With that, he took the initiative to cut off the connection. The fifth elder was both angry and amused at the same time. What's the hurry? I haven't finished my words. Even if you want to withdraw, other people have to give way. On the other side, the fifth elder of the Lingjian school's non-phase wealth protection sword Qi completely crushed the disciplinary elder Xiaobo's decisive blow. His blow failed. Feeling the unshakable power of the non-phase sword Qi, Xiaobo immediately suppressed his injury and retreated. The strength of a peak Yuanying stage cultivator was, after all, no small matter. In just a few steps, his broken arm was regenerated, and the damage to his jade mansion was also completely repaired. However, his confidence could no longer be found. In terms of strength, he was confident that he would not lose to a king pill. However, several times when he made his move, he was countered in an unexpected way. Xiaobo realized that it was not a wise move to continue to fight. Not to mention, even if he could fight with Wang Wu until both sides suffered, what's the use? If he couldn't keep the immortal beast, it would be a failure. Under the cover of the dark clouds, Xiaobo silently calculated the present situation. His peak Yuanying stage cultivation base made his primordial spirit very powerful, which could carry out hundreds of thousands of calculations and deductions in an instant. However, even after racking his brains, he still couldn't think of a way to solve the situation. The other side only needed to buy a moment of time to escape. Even if he had great ability, he still wouldn't be able to stop them. The appearance of Wang Wu was really a headache. For now, unless there was another cultivator with the same level as him, he would go all out to suppress Wang Wu, and that person would go to suppress Wang Lu. Only then would it be possible to keep the other side here. However, in such a hurry, where could he find another peak Yuanying stage cultivator? As the dignified Beast Master School's disciplinary elder, it was already rare for him to travel thousands of miles to come to Cloud Region. In his sect, many people said that it was like using a butcher's knife to kill a chicken. After all, he thought that he only needed to deal with a few Shudan and King Pill Juniors, but unexpectedly, this monster suddenly popped out. Although his strength was strong, what he was really good at was cooperating with the two evil dragons. In the war of thousands of troops and horses, fighting one against many, his offensive ability was slightly inferior. Right now, he was afraid that it was too late to ask for help. From the southern heaven region to Cloud region was thousands of miles away, and out of his own consideration, Tiger King Lei Zhan did not set up a transmission array in the division. Relying solely on his own cultivation base, even his sect leader senior brother would not be able to instantly arrive. While Xiaobo was feeling anxious, Wang Lu without hesitation, pulled by Xueqi and was about to leave his mark on the heavenly talisman. Xiaobo's eyes almost popped out of their sockets, wishing that he could immediately dismember by Xueqi. However, the Dao heart in his jade mansion firmly suppressed this impulse, telling him that even if he rushed forward, he would not be able to break Wang Wu's non-phase sword Qi and would only bring disgrace to himself. However, at this time, a gentle voice suddenly came in. Hee, my Beast Master School is very hospitable. Since you have come, why are you in such a hurry to leave? The person who spoke seemed to be close to his ear, and the voice was as gentle as the spring breeze. However, upon hearing the voice, a chill rose from the bottom of Xiao Qi's heart. Reward giver elder? Wang Lu inwardly sneered. I don't care what kind of elder you are, I'll leave first. In any case, with his master's ability, she wouldn't be left behind by the Beast Master School's trash. At this time, Bai Shishuan's claw mark has been pressed on the heavenly talisman. Wang Lu was about to activate it, but a faint fluctuation came from the heavenly talisman, which made him abruptly stop, suppressing the heavenly talisman that was about to be activated. The next moment, he looked up at the sky and saw that on the crown cloud peak, there was a young cultivator with white hair and beard. That cultivator's appearance was gentle and amiable, and his pair of slender eyes were squinted into a line. However, his tightly pursed lips gave people a mean and cold feeling. At the same time, this cultivator's right palm was holding a rock-potted plant. Looking at it, that small rockery was steep and towering, like a sharp sword that pierced the sky. The mountainside was surrounded by clouds and mist. If this wasn't Spirit Sword Mountain, then what was it? The 12 peaks of Spirit Sword Mountain could only be expanded by the heaven and earth teleportation technique. From the outside, the Spirit Sword Mountain looked like a lonely mountain, and the mountain was shaped like a sword. That cultivator was holding a miniature Spirit Sword Mountain, looking down at Wang Lu with a smile. Wang Lu shook his head in a self-deprecating manner, and then took back the Spirit Sword Heavenly Talisman. There was no need to use the heavenly talisman anymore. The teleportation point of the Spirit Sword Heavenly Talisman was the Spirit Sword Mountain. However, that cultivator used his universe in the sleeve magical ability to mimic a rockery in his palm, which produced an extremely strong interference effect. Although the probability of successful interference was only 1/3, as long as the interference was successful, it was equal to consuming the precious heavenly talisman in Wang Lu's hand. And Wang Lu didn't intend to gamble on that 2/3 probability. The Spirit Sword Heavenly Talisman was cracked in this way. On one hand, that cultivator's magical ability was amazing. He was able to imitate the charm of the Spirit Sword Mountain with his own magical power. On the other hand, it was because Wang Lu had exposed the heavenly talisman to the outside world for too long. That cultivator obviously didn't come later than Xiao Bo. After arriving at the Crown Cloud Peak, he has been lurking in the dark, carefully observing the heavenly talisman in Wang Lu's hand. After capturing the characteristics of the heavenly talisman, he then made a targeted move. The escape effect of the heavenly talisman could be said to be absolute, but that was only in the case of an unexpected situation. If the opponent locked the heavenly talisman for a long time, and then made a targeted arrangement, it was not uncommon for the Spirit Sword Heavenly Talisman to be cracked. After all, no matter how magical the heavenly talisman was, it was still a dead object. Although it had spirituality, its changes were limited. Although Wang Lu didn't mean it, the several times he tried to activate the heavenly talisman, he revealed too many flaws. Now that it had been cracked, he had nothing to say. In any case, even if the sky collapsed, his master would be there to support it. She should be able to withstand the two great elders of the Beastmaster School, right? Sure enough, his master did not disappoint him at all. Glancing at the Crown Cloud Peak from the corner of his eyes, he unceremoniously ridiculed them. Yo, Li Han, you the old turtle, also showed up? The cultivator called Li Han smiled. My disciple was killed, how could I, as his master, turn a blind eye to him in the southern heaven region? Although Lei Zhen, that child, is willful disobedient, and his talent is not that good, after all, he is my disciple. Now that he's dead, I must stand up for him. Just like what you're doing now. With that, he slowly walked down from the top of the Crown Cloud Peak. He stepped on the void, and each step condensed a white cloud. A moment later, he stepped on a cloud ladder from the top of the mountain and arrived in front of Wang Wu. The fifth elder of the Lingjian school? I've heard of your name for a long time. Seeing you today, it's really a well-deserved reputation. A mere peak king pill can actually make junior brother Xiao Bo helpless. If I didn't see it with my own eyes, I really can't imagine that someone can actually bring out the effect of a king pill to this point. Li Han said and then smiled. But, what if there are two peak Yuanying stage cultivators? What can you do with a mere king pill? While speaking, his own imposing manner also revealed its sharpness. A burst of cold aura that could freeze everything spread out. Compared to Xiao Bo's deep and gloomy aura, Li Han's magical power was softer and purer. Just a little bit of magical power was enough to make the full moon valley feel like it was in a harsh winter. The creatures inside and outside the valley began to shiver, and even the dark clouds in the sky slightly condensed, showing that his cultivation level was several times higher than Xiao Bo's. Although they were both peak Yuanying stage cultivators, the difference in strength between them could be very big. This was also a common phenomenon in front of every bottleneck on the road of immortal cultivation. Although Xiao Bo hated this elder who liked to pretend to be young, but since he came, the situation here was also settled. No matter how strong Wang Wu was, could she be stronger than the two great elders of the Beastmaster School? Even if she herself had the power to protect herself, could she save her apprentice and the young immortal beast? However, Wang Wu just smiled dismissively. Two peak Yuanying stage cultivators are good. But who told you that I only have one king pill here? Li Han shook his head. If Zen Master Guru was here, I would immediately withdraw without saying anything. But at this time, her avatar's magical power is almost exhausted and simply cannot fight anymore. If you push her out, I'm afraid it's useless. What a joke. Who told you that my second king pill is Xueqi? Today, I'll let you open your eyes. Along with Wang Wu's contemptuous laughter, with her as the center, a tsunami-like wave of magical power violently spread out. The faint golden light around the woman became as dazzling as the sun, and within that light, there were two golden cores that shone with each other. Double king pills. To deal with the two of you, I alone am enough. While speaking, the full moon valley has been filled with golden light, dispersing the deep cold and dark clouds outside. With the double king pill, Wang Wu released an astonishing power that was far above any king pill. In front of the golden light, the two peak Yuanying stage great elders were also defeated again and again, finding it difficult to resist. The number one king pill in 9 regions was not a lie. In the face of this horrifying scene, Xiao Bo was disheartened. Li Han, on the other hand, was calm. After a moment of consideration, he made a decision. I think the problem between us should be solved peacefully. Chapter 217. The number one king pill in 9 regions? Lingjian school was really too modest. Li Han inwardly sighed with emotion. This was not the number one king pill in 9 regions. This was clearly the number 1 and number 2 king pill in 9 regions. When Wang Wu impressively showed the double king pill, Li Han knew that today's matter could not be solved by force. If 2 peak Yuanying stage cultivators had a 70 to 80% chance of winning against the number 1 king pill in 9 regions, then the chance of winning against this double king pill was perhaps less than 40%. In the Dao heart of Li Han's Jade Mansion, the early warning instinct from the beast gave him a very clear instruction. Don't lightly start a fight. Perhaps if they really fought, Li Han and Xiao Bo could use the unique magical ability of Yuanying stage to save the situation and suppress the opponent. However, it was only a possibility. Not to mention who knew how many cards the opponent had? The appearance of the double king pill, for Li Han and the others, not only meant that the strength of the opponent had at least doubled, but also meant that a lot of the previous information about the 5th Elder of Spirit Sword Sect could be concluded to be wrong. For this 5th Elder, a large part of the Wanxian League people's opinion was that she was unbearable and not worth mentioning. The so-called number 1 king pill in 9 regions was more like a mockery. Her peers were all peak Yuanying stage cultivators. Only she, this good-for-nothing king pill stage cultivator, could dominate. 20 years ago, when her junior brother Xiao Bo fought with her, he also said that although her fighting power was far beyond the average king pill, she would be very weak in the face of cultivators above Yuanying stage. Now, it seemed that what they heard was false, and what they saw was true. The number 1 king pill in 9 regions was not the king pill, but the number 1. The person who gave her this title did not compliment her because she was one of the 5 uniques of Lingjian school, nor did he ridicule her for not being able to break through the stage of king pill. Instead, he said that even if it was the king pill, she was still the number 1. As a cultivator who had experienced the peak of the king pill to the incarnation of the nascent soul, Li Han was very clear that the double king pill was almost a fantasy under the current theoretical framework of cultivation. However, she could actually break the common sense that had been passed down for thousands of years in the cultivation world. This was even more terrifying than the double king pill. It was not wise to make an enemy out of such a person. What's more, Wang Wu's display of the double king pill was tantamount to revealing her trump card. If she didn't show any mercy, it would be difficult for her to turn the situation around if she went against her. At that time, it wouldn't just be a dispute between a few great cultivators, it would also logically develop into a war between the Beast Master School and the Lingjian School. Although the Beast Master School was a high-rank school, and the cultivation of the head of the school was even more unfathomable, if they were to really confront the 5 absolutes without showing any mercy, at least Li Han wouldn't be able to bear this responsibility. In fact, nowadays, most of the disputes between schools in the Wanxian League would not go to the last step. The common practice was that the 2 sides would show off their muscles to each other, and the one who was not confident enough would retreat. But now, after Wang Wu's double king pill appeared, her momentum and confidence were raised to the peak, while the confidence of Li Han and the others was greatly shaken. Therefore, it was better to resolve the matter peacefully. As one of the top 3 elders of the Beast Master School, Li Han hadn't taken the initiative to retreat for a long time, but this rare retreat was not appreciated by the opponent at all. This matter can be resolved peacefully? Wang Wu shook her head and chuckled. I've already taken out the king pill, and you want me to resolve it peacefully? Li Han's expression turned serious. Otherwise, do you really want to cause a war between the 2 schools? At that time, be careful that the Wanxian League will implement comprehensive sanctions on your Lingjian school. Let's be clear. This is the territory of the Beast Master School. Your disciple is robbing my school's immortal beast here. It's not justifiable no matter where you put it. Although Li Han's tone was tough, those who were familiar with his way of doing things knew that behind the strong tone was often a weak foundation. However, Li Han's point of view couldn't be ignored. If the previous fight between Wang Lu and Tiger King was just a personal grudge, then once it rose to the level of the Great Elder, it often meant a sect war. And in today's system, it was impossible to bypass the Wanxian League in a sect war, and under the framework of the Wanxian League, there was still some reason. Even Shangjing's sect, when implementing the hegemony of the immortal path, they also had to pay attention to the justifiable reason. For example, there was a demonic path sacred tool found inside your sect, or the people under your sect's rule were living in destitution, and so on. If they unreasonably robbed other people's treasures and killed other people's cultivators, they would immediately be attacked by others. At that time, even Shangjing's sect wouldn't be able to withstand it. Therefore, now that Li Han saw that his muscles couldn't shine, he immediately settled for the next best thing, trying to overwhelm the other side with reason. The immortal beast was most likely lost, so he wanted to make the Lingjian school pay the price as much as possible. However, Li Han's point was the same as Xiao Bo's, which was that the Grand Cloud Mountain was the Beast Master School's territory, and the Lingjian school was tantamount to burglary. And Wang Wu was also impolite. She turned around and said, "Wang Lu, go." Wang Lu wryly smiled, stepped forward, and then said in a clear voice, "The land has an owner, but the people have no owner. Your Beast Master School occupies the Grand Cloud Mountain, so you're the master of this place. The rocks, rivers, and even the surrounding spiritual energy can be used by you. However, the creatures on the Grand Cloud Mountain are not your slaves. They have the right to choose their own home." Seeing that Wang Wu didn't personally come forward, but instead sent a shoot-on-stage cultivator, Li Han couldn't help but frown. "Do you have the right to speak here?" Wang Wu sneered. "You don't want to talk? Then do it. My big king pill is already hungry and thirsty." Li Han's heart was boiling with anger. The other side let a junior disciple argue eloquently with him. The Great Elder clearly didn't admit that he had the qualification to talk to her face to face. He, Li Han, had been cultivating for 200 years, and he had never been treated with such contempt. Even when he went to the Shangjing sect in the past, those deity-stage Great Elders were also polite to him. But this King Pill actually. No wonder her strength was so valiant, yet her reputation in the immortal cultivation world was a mess. However, on second thought, since it was determined to have a civil and not a physical fight, the more arrogant the other side was, the more advantageous it would be for him. Now, every word of the two sides would be used as evidence to be presented to the Wanxian League arbitration body. If it was done properly, perhaps the Wanxian League would make a decision to order the Lingjian school to return the immortal beast. Of course, this decision would certainly be vetoed by the Lingjian school, but there would be a lot of room for maneuver. Thinking to this, Li Han suppressed his anger and responded to Wang Lu's statement. "Beast Master School has never treated living creatures as slaves, and we also oppose any enslavement of living creatures. Therefore, I ask the cultivators of the Lingjian school to release the enslaved immortal beast back to the Grand Cloud Mountain as soon as possible." Wang Lu said with a smile. "Release it back to the Grand Cloud Mountain? But Xueqi herself doesn't have this intention. She has already promised to go back to the Spirit Sword Mountain with me." Li Han sternly said, although the moon spirit of the Grand Cloud Mountain was transformed by the moonlight 60 years ago, her mind was truly resuscitated only after the Emperor Essence Day. Right now, she's like a piece of white paper. Other people can easily deceive her. Perhaps a bone can make her close to you. How could such a decision count? Even if she's a human, she doesn't have the right to make her own decisions. She needs a guardian to look after her. Wang Lu raised his eyebrows, thinking that this guy was indeed worthy to be the reward-giver elder. His debating skill was quite good. The entry point of the topic was very incisive, not far-fetched at all. However, as the leader of a sect with hundreds of millions of followers, would he be afraid of debating with others? Since we're talking about guardian, then I might as well make it clear. 3 days ago, Xueqi's guardian, the former spirit of the Grand Cloud Mountain, has entrusted her to me. Li Han's expression moved, and then he immediately asked, "Then may I ask where is the former spirit of the Grand Cloud Mountain?" Wang Lu remembered the misty fairy on the moonlit night at the tranquil lake, and his expression couldn't help but turn gloomy. "She has fallen. Then there's no proof." Li Han gradually relaxed. The topic was obviously more and more favorable to him. Of course, in view of the fall of the former mountain spirit, we can't say that the immortal beast naturally belongs to us. Therefore, It's better to set her free and let her live on the Grand Cloud Mountain for 10 years. After 10 years, when her mind has matured, then she can make a decision. At that time, if she still wholeheartedly wants to go to Spirit Sword Mountain, our Beast Master School can only give her away. Wang Wu sneered. 10 years? Give you 10 years to brainwash the immortal beast? You dare to say this kind of nonsense plan? Li Han sternly said. Our Beast Master School has always respected spirit beasts. If it's about the treatment of spirit beasts, our Beast Master School has the advantage compared to any other sect. For example, many of our great elders are spirit beasts, and regarding the research and cultivation of spirit beasts, we are second to none in the Wanxian League. When it comes to the growth environment of spirit beasts, Beast Master School doesn't lose to any other sect. This is already well known in the Wanxian League. Therefore, the brainwashing thing is purely your subjective assumption, without any basis. At this time, the cat girl in the valley could not help but say, Beast Master School respects spirit beasts? Then do you know that for decades a Xia? Before she could finish, she was interrupted by Li Han. Beast Master School is a big business, so it's inevitable that there will occasionally be outlaws who do things that disgrace the school's reputation. Nowadays, which sect in the Wanxian League dares to say that all of them are saints and have never made a mistake in their life? Speaking of which, your reputation as the fifth elder of Lingjian School is not that good. Wang Wu bemoaned the state of the universe and pitying the fate of mankind as she looked up and sighed. The world has misunderstood me. Li Han sneered a few times, and then said, if you don't feel relieved, you can check whether we have used a forced brainwashing spell on the immortal beast or not. In these 10 years, you are also welcome to visit us at any time and provide all kinds of conditions for the immortal beast. Finally, the immortal beast herself will make a judgment on which side is more suitable for her. Wang Wu said, your Beast Master School is the master of this place. Being close to the water pavilion seems to be unfair. Li Han said, yes, our Beast Master School is the master of this place. Being close to the water pavilion, as for fairness. Who told your Lingjian School not to set up a branch on the Grand Cloud Mountain? If you set up a branch here a few years in advance, would Beast Master School dare to compete with the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League? The matter of the immortal beast was originally planned by us first. It was your Lingjian School who interfered, yet you have the nerve to accuse us of being close to the water pavilion for being unfair? Seeing that after several rounds of dialogue, Li Han had already faintly taken the absolute initiative, Wang Wu secretly smiled and gave her disciple a wink. I've done the job of acting as a pawn. The next decisive blow is up to you. Wang Lu also secretly smiled and gave his master a wink that said, no problem. Then he asked a question, Elder Li, as you said, when the immortal beast first transforms, its mind is like a blank piece of paper. Even if you give her a bone, she will still follow you. So do you know why she would rather abandon this familiar home that she has lived in for 60 years and come back to Spirit Sword Mountain with me? Li Han sneered. It's nothing more than flowery words. If you really have the confidence to attract her, you should have set up a 10-year agreement with me. Within 10 years, we'll see which side can give her the best conditions and environment to grow. Finally, she herself will weigh the pros and cons and make the decision. Wang Lu shook his head and put on a look that said, your brain is full of environment, conditions, and weighing the pros and cons. This is the biggest reason why you're not accepted by Xueqi. All living things have a spirit, and the most attractive thing between living things is sincerity, not interest. If you invest with interest, you can only return with interest. Only by investing with sincerity can you return with sincerity. While speaking, Wang Lu walked to Bai Shishuan's side, gently smiled at the dazed girl, and then reached out to pull her into his arms. Then, in a clear voice he said, Bai Shishuan and I really love each other, we've already decided to marry each other. Chapter 218. Bai Shishuan and I are truly in love, and have long pledged to marry each other. They had already promised to marry each other, promised to marry each other, promised to marry each other, married each other, married each other. The earth-shattering declaration made Li Han's vision go black. Mother ***, so you still have this move. The previous rounds of conversation were just a setup, waiting for this sentence to explode. Li Han suppressed the agitation in his heart and stared at Wang Lu. He saw that the young man was tenderly and sweetly looking at Bai Shishuan, and then turned his head to look at him. His expression was awe-inspiring and awe-inspiring, without the slightest fear, as if they were a pair of ill-fated mandarin ducks facing great social pressure. Li Han was so angry that he cursed in his heart. Do you have any fucking shame? It was clearly you who came to our territory to mess things up, but now you're putting on an expression as if you've been greatly wronged? Truly worthy to be a cultivator of non-phase peak. Shameless to the point of being fearless and even invincible. No wonder even with such a formidable cultivation base, his reputation was unbearable. Of course, Li Han did not believe in true love, but what could he do? Did he want the other party to take action to prove their commitment? He had no doubt that with the other party's thick skin, he would be able to do anything. What a good true love, private commitment. Li Han's jade mansion trembled from the hatred in his heart. His nascent soul shone brilliantly, and the cold air involuntarily seeped out of his body, staining him with a layer of frost. However, he didn't say another word. Because there was nothing left to say. Although Wang Lu's move of deciding to marry her was shameless, it was indeed a good move and could be said to be a stroke of genius. The beast taming school's environment, techniques, and other objective conditions were completely vulnerable in front of true love. It was like the autumn wind sweeping away the fallen leaves. In reality, this was indeed the case. Objectively speaking, the beast taming school had indeed been planning for many years. They had invested a large amount of manpower and resources to create an inescapable net. They were not afraid that the immortal beasts would not obey. But the immortal beasts did not obey. However, Wang Lu had only spent a few short days to make the immortal beast willingly follow him. No matter how worthless it was to be willing to follow an immortal beast that was like a piece of white paper, willingly was still willingly. This was a rather powerful trump card. The only thing Li Han could do was to use the excuse that the immortal beast was young and ignorant of worldly affairs as an excuse to dilute the weight of her subjective will. As a result, Wang Lu resorted to a killer move. He sublimated willingness into mutual affection, raising the weight of subjective will to infinity. If the beast taming school were to forcefully entangle them, it would be an extremely dishonorable act of snatching away their beloved. Objectively speaking, no matter how much they had suffered because of this, it was their fault for not being fated. Although Li Han's temperament was gloomy, he had also read a lot of stories and novels. He was very clear about the popular love stories of the Wanxian League nowadays. It was precisely this kind of plot. A penniless and poor boy was favored by the daughter of a big sect leader. Then, after experiencing countless difficulties and dangers, he increased his cultivation, accumulated resources, and defeated a certain immortal second generation who was betrothed to the heroine before she was born. What's more, Wang Lu was not a penniless and poor boy. He was a true disciple of one of the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League. He and the immortal beast by Xueqi were simply a perfect match. Moreover, the love between a human and a spiritual beast was admittedly somewhat deviant. But nowadays, the Wanxian League was changing with each passing day. It was precisely the era where values were constantly being updated, and Wang Lu was walking right in front of the times. If Wang Lu were to publicize this matter, not only would people not question whether or not his actions on the Grand Cloud Mountain were in line with the rules, they would instead praise him for being affectionate. Absurd? It was indeed absurd, but this was the reality. This was the F*King reality. With great difficulty, Li Han resisted the urge to make a move. With incomparable rigidity, he squeezed out a few words from his throat. Is that so? Then that's really, congratulations. Wang Lu's arm around Bai Shishuan's waist tightened even more. You're too polite. Bai Shishuan was at a loss as to what to do. She raised her head to look at Wang Lu's profile. Just now, when Wang Lu and Li Han exchanged words, she had listened to the entire conversation. There were too many issues that she didn't understand, but after all, she was smart and had roughly figured out the context. The Beast Master School was unwilling to let her go, but Wang Lu was bent on taking her away. Subjectively speaking, she certainly hoped to stay on the Grand Cloud Mountain. Every blade of grass and every tree on the mountain contained her 60 years of yearning. But on the other hand, her mother had very seriously warned her to listen to Wang Lu's words. Moreover, Wang Lu also had a scent that she liked. In the end, it was really difficult for her to decide which path to take. Until Wang Lu said that they truly loved each other, and that they were privately committed to each other, Bai Shishuan's mind seemed to have been struck by a spring thunder. She was in a trance. Really and truly love each other? So, So he and I are actually really in love? Moreover, we've already privately committed to each other? Why didn't I know about this before? Bai Shixian was indescribably shocked. Her heart felt as if it was overturning a sea, and the impact of this huge amount of information made her on the verge of collapse. But on the other hand, she remembered her mother, Grand Cloud Fairy, had once told her, after transforming, if there is any inexplicable doubt, then listen to Wang Lu's opinion. Grand Cloud Fairy's trust towards Wang Lu was unreservedly, and Bai Shixian's trust towards Grand Cloud Fairy was also unreservedly. The result of these two transmissions was that, in the midst of extreme shock, the young girl resolutely chose to believe in Wang Lu. Since he said so, then I probably really have privately committed to him. Then, according to mother's words, after transforming, I must be like any other woman. If I marry a chicken, follow the chicken. If I marry a dog, follow the dog. Then from now on am I his? It feels like this is progressing very quickly, but there were more and more fragmented thoughts. As Bai Shixian thought about it, her cheeks flushed red. In the eyes of outsiders, it simply confirmed what Wang Lu had said about privately committing to him. Li Han was even more cursing in his heart. All the good cabbages have been taken by pigs. Seeing that the situation had already been decided, Wang Wu timely came forward and said, "Okay, we have to go back and arrange the bridal chamber for the couple. You guys still haven't left, are you planning to follow us?" Being slapped in the face so blatantly, Li Han's eyes flashed with a trace of ruthlessness. "You can be proud for a moment, but you may not be proud for a lifetime. It's better to leave some leeway." Wang Wu casually waved her hand. Yes, don't bully the young for being poor. I understand this rule. But you've cultivated for more than 200 years. You're no longer a young man, right? You? Don't bully the young for being poor. Don't bully the middle-aged for being poor. Don't bully the old for being poor. Finally, you say that death is a big thing and burial is a peaceful thing. Isn't that how your whole life is? Wang Wu unceremoniously ridiculed him. At the same time, the power of the double king pill spread out unreservedly, and the golden light shone brightly. Xiao Bo, who was less shrewd, felt his blood rush to his face. Two black flood dragons circled around his arms and roared. He was ready to fight to the death, but Li Han knew that this was the price he had to pay for losing the argument. If it was Wang Lu who was refuted by him, he would not be polite with his words and would certainly make him lose face. Ever since the Wanxian League integrated the immortal cultivation world of 9 regions, the cruel and naked rules had been greatly eased. Cultivators didn't have to worry about being killed when they went out to hunt for treasures. Those who started late and had a low cultivation base also didn't have to worry about being killed by great cultivators with the reason of everyone is an ant. However, the fundamental rules that drove the operation of the Wanxian League had not changed. The weak were prey to the strong, that's all. It was just that compared to the bloody era of the past, there was a bit more civilized camouflage. Many times, reason and politeness were still pale and powerless in front of the fist. Junior brother, let's go. Xiao Bo's eyes widened as he incredulously looked at Li Han. He really wanted to ask him, as one of the top 3 great elders of the sect, how could he swallow such a vicious mockery? How could he put the sect's reputation? However, when Xiao Bo saw that Li Han was constantly releasing cold air and blood oozing out from the corner of his mouth, he realized that he was suppressing his great anger. When he turned his head to look at Wang Wu's 2 terrifying king pills, a strong sense of powerlessness suddenly rose in Xiao Bo's heart. It was as if, in front of Wang Wu, he was a bit insignificant. Was this a common demonic barrier on the immortal cultivation path? When he reached the nascent soul stage, this demonic barrier would become an important obstacle. However, at this moment, Xiao Bo could only swallow this bitter fruit. All right, senior brother, let's go. With that, he and Li Han, as if by prior agreement, simultaneously flew away. Their figures soon disappeared in the boundless sea of clouds. When the 2 great elders left at the same time, the Beast Master School cultivators on the Crown Cloud Peak were in an uproar. However, at this time, their existence was already weak and powerless, so no one would pay attention to their reaction. The bright and clear sunlight sprinkled down, but it was unable to disperse the cold on the Crown Cloud Peak. Haha, cool. After forcing back the 2 great elders of the Beast Master School, the 5th elder of the Lingjian School let out a loud laugh. She untied the wine pot from her waist and, in one breath, drank several jeans of immortal wine that was full of spiritual energy. Next, putting down the wine pot, Wang Wu saw that Wang Lu and Bai Shixian were still hugging each other. She couldn't help but laugh. Hey, when are you going to stop hugging each other? Don't tell me you guys are really going to marry each other? But she saw that although Wang Lu's face was solemn, cold sweat had already seeped out from his forehead. The focus of her gaze changed, and she saw the sweet face of a little woman, Bai Shixian, gently nestling in Wang Lu's arms. Puff! A mouthful of priceless immortal wine couldn't help but spurt out from her mouth. Wang Lu helplessly said through primordial spirit, "You've seen this scene, how could I let go? What's more, to me, it's nothing more than a weapon for a verbal confrontation, but it will still damage her reputation. You've just used her, and now you're acting as if nothing happened? Isn't that too heartless?" Wang Wu almost spurted out the second mouthful of wine. "You're reaping what you sow." "Nonsense, what else could I do at that time? That Li Han is not easy to deal with." While saying that, Wang Lu felt a few faintly discernible malice coming from behind him. He didn't know whether it was from Lu Li, Quan Zhihua, or Catgirl Ling Yan. He sighed. This was simply harming the enemy by harming 800. Hee, I'm glad to see that. Wang Wu gloatingly smiled, and then asked, "I heard you just bought a good flying boat." "Forget it, who let me be your master? I'll help you solve this problem." Wang Lu hurriedly said, "Master is really loyal, but how are you going to solve this problem?" "Isn't that simple? Display my irresistible personal charm. Let Bai Shixian fall in love with me, won't you be free?" Chapter 219. As a master, it was necessary to always solve problems for the disciple. When Wang Lu encountered difficulties, she was able to stand up for him at the first time. Wang Wu's sense of service was certainly commendable, but at the same time, she showed overestimation of one's capabilities and even shamelessness, which made people unable to praise her. In the face of his master who had stuck out her chest to show her confidence, Wang Lu was silent for a while, and even subconsciously loosened his arm that was wrapped around by Shixuan's waist. "Master, to put it bluntly, you're coveting Shixuan's immortal beast origin, right?" After a moment of thought, Wang Lu exposed the truth. "I remember when you appeared, your first sentence was my non-phase peak's immortal beast? When did Bai Shixian become the non-phase peak's property?" Wang Wu's countenance remained unchanged. "Look at what you're saying. As a master, how could I covet my disciple's thing? Even if you squander a huge sum of money to buy a luxurious flying boat, I won't be jealous." "Master, you've confessed without being pressed. That's not the point. I'm thinking for you, okay? You're a non-phase peak disciple, and Bai Shixian is your sister. So what's wrong with saying that she's a non-phase peak's person? Not to mention, you're my non-phase peak successor disciple. Just like the sun in the morning, everything on the non-phase peak is yours." Wang Lu sneered. "Those local tyrants who lie to a little girl and say that sooner or later, they'll help her up the ladder, they also have the same face. You and I have been master and disciple for 10 years, but unexpectedly, we can't exchange for basic trust, which really makes me grieved. If I believe you, I'll be the one grieving for my own IQ." The master and disciple quarreled incessantly, ignoring the other people around them. However, Xueqi, Lu Li, and the others were just watching with interest. No one interrupted them, they just silently watched the lively scene and then whispered a few words to each other. However, Bai Shixian, who stood next to Wang Lu, had her eyes glued to Wang Wu for a long time, unable to move away. Unexpectedly, she seemed to be obsessed. A moment later, Wang Wu became aware of Bai Shixuan's gaze, and couldn't help but feel happy. She flaunted to Wang Lu. "Look, while you're slandering master, Shixuan's eyes are like a torch. She has already seen my unique charm, and has secretly fallen in love with me." Wang Lu sneered. "I think he's just trying to find moral integrity from you, but he can't find it, so he's lost." Wang Wu sneered. "The wailing of a stray dog is really unpleasant to hear. But don't worry, I will remember to send you an invitation for my wedding with Shixian. You should also remember to bring some money." Wang Lu sneered. "Don't worry, I will bring out 9 copper coins to make you kneel and lick my feet." Wang Wu sneered. "At that time, I will have an immortal beast. Why would I care about your 9 copper coins?" Don't think I'll be poor forever. Finished speaking, she no longer entangled herself in the verbal battle with Wang Lu, walked in front of Bai Shixian, and blossomed with an unprecedented gentle smile. Little sister Shixian, do you want to accompany big sister to see the koi fish? Because she knew that the other party was just a little girl who had just gained spiritual wisdom, and was as pure as a piece of white paper, Wang Wu casually struck up a conversation with her. But the next moment, Bai Shixian's reaction was far beyond her expectations. 2 clear lines of tears streaked across the girl's cheeks. Wang Wu was immediately shocked. Are you crying tears of joy? Bai Shixian's tears flowed like a spring, but she remained silent. Wang Lu said in surprise, Master, look at you, your moral integrity is too low, causing you to look repulsive. You scared me to tears. Regarding Bai Shixian's tears, different people have different interpretations, but the next moment, the girl revealed the answer herself. She gently stretched out her hand and touched Wang Wu's face. Doesn't it hurt? Wang Wu was baffled, thinking, what does it hurt? However, the cool touch on her face suddenly had a penetrating power, penetrating through her skin and into the depths of her heart, touching the darkness that had not been touched for many years. Great waves suddenly appeared in Wang Wu's heart. The girl's body trembled, and then she incredulously looked at Bai Shixian, whose face was filled with sorrow and tears. She wanted to say something, but inexplicably choked with sobs, unable to speak. A subtle emotion silently surged between the two. Wang Wu and Bai Shixian stared at each other, as if petrified. Bai Shixian's tears continued to flow, and Wang Wu was gradually infected, her body slightly trembling. Okay, if you two want to be affectionate with me, don't do it in front of me, your good friend, okay? Xueqi timely interjected. He reached out and gently patted the two's head, immediately interrupting the emotional transmission. Wang Wu recovered the fastest. She forcefully blinked her eyes and smiled. I'm sorry, my period just came. Then she took a few steps back and didn't say a word. Obviously, it was difficult for her to calm down, and she wasn't as relaxed as she appeared. Bai Shixian was stunned for a long time. Then she let out an "op" sound and blankly shook her head. What's wrong with me? Wang Wu and Xueqi looked at her at the same time, and then looked at each other, sighing with emotion at the magical power of immortal beasts. Xueqi transmitted his voice through his primordial spirit. How does it feel to have one's heart pointed out, my friend? Wang Wu sighed. As a woman, I've never felt such a strong and powerful penetration. Xueqi exclaimed. You recover really fast. Just 2 sentences and you've already revealed your true colors. Wang Wu said, Humph, it's not a big deal. After so many years, it's fine if it's occasionally turned over and sighed with emotion. Do you want to be entangled for a long time? However, this little girl's magical power is really far beyond my expectation. You should know how my non-phase immortal heart is. In recent years, it has been strengthened several times, but it still can't resist her gentle touch. Immortal beasts are indeed immortal beasts. Their magical power is not like that of the human world. Otherwise, it wouldn't be worth Beast Master School to go through so much trouble for her. Although she has passed the form transformation tribulation, she's still a baby, and it would take at least thousands of years for her to reach maturity. After thousands of years, the cultivators of today have long become dust, and it's unknown whether Beast Master School can continue to exist. Even so, they still yearn for Bai Shixian, which shows her value. Moreover, now it seems that Beast Master School has underestimated her a bit. After all, before this, there hasn't been a genuine immortal beast in 9 regions for a long time. Wang Wu shook her head. Haven't seen for a long time? Not necessarily. Just being by that kid Wang Lu's side is already. This guy's providence is so strong that it's amazing. Xueqi also agreed. Yes, Wang Lu's ability to involve cause and effect has never been seen before. I can almost see the whirlpool of cause and effect with my naked eyes. I think even Immortal Qin and Great Ancestor Desheng are no better than this. Wang Wu said with a smile. You think too highly of him. It's nothing more than his ability to stir up trouble. This kind of person, although he will have many fortuitous encounters and his cultivation base will advance by leaps and bounds contrary to common sense, the probability of him dying prematurely is also very high. The outstanding tree in the forest will be destroyed by the wind, and the geniuses who have fallen in these years are actually. Speaking to this, she seemed to have stirred up a strange emotion and could not help but shut her mouth. Xueqi also avoided this topic and said, That's why you specifically asked me to take care of him, and later on, because you were worried, you personally came over. Wang Wu smiled and said nothing. But I'm a little curious. You asked him to come to Cloud Region under the pretext of delivering a letter. Did you already expect this experience? How can I be so far-sighted? If I really have this ability, I would have already looked for immortal fate all over the world. Wang Wu said and shook her head with some annoyance. It's just some old fool who thinks he's smart. Oh? Then he's really kind to give such a big opportunity to Wang Lu. I heard that he himself also has a successor disciple. Wang Wu said, Grand Cloud Mountain is like pulling a tooth from a tiger's mouth. To deal with a high-rank sect, Wang Lu has done so many things, but in the end, I still have to come forward to clean up the mess. If it was Zhu Shiyao, she would have been killed long ago. However, that old thing did not treat his disciple badly. The immortal fate that he left for Zhu Shiyao is not inferior to that of Wang Lu. A month later in the Southern Heaven region, there will be a high-rank spiritual treasure-level ancient sword, and Zhu Shiyao has already booked it. Xueqi was surprised. Southern Heaven region, high-rank spiritual treasure? Let a junior disciple fight for it? The place where it will appear is the ancient sword tomb. Opportunity is more important than cultivation base, and when it comes to sword fate, no one in the entire Spirit Sword Mountain can compare to Zhu Shiyao. As long as she doesn't court death, it's inevitable that she will be able to snatch the treasure. Not to mention that not long ago, she has just killed a spirit beast whose cultivation base is close to Yuanying stage, so her sword power is at its peak. Even some senior cultivators, if they take her lightly, would suffer a big loss. After talking about Zhu Shiyao, Wang Wu said, Since this matter is over, I'm ready to bring people back to the mountain. Do you want to go to the Spirit Sword Mountain with me for a couple of days? Xueqi shook his head. Forget it, I have my own experiential learning in the Grand Cloud platform. This time, I've accompanied this child Wang Lu to experience some things, and I'm one step closer to the deity stage. I have to seriously prepare for it. Remember to call me when the divine tribulation comes. Hey, forget it. If I call you, I'm afraid I'll become the most useless cultivator among the deity stage cultivators. If you have the heart, just help me burn some incense and pray for me. I pray that you fail to reach deity stage and become disheartened, so that I can take advantage of the situation and put you in my bowl forever. Get lost. I'm leaving. Remember to think of me when you're free. Get lost. After bidding farewell to Xueqi, the people of Non-Phase Peak boarded Wang Lu's cloud wave boat and left the Grand Cloud Mountain. Sitting in the flying boat, looking at the waterfall-like scenery of the Grand Cloud Mountain outside the window, Wang Lu couldn't help but sigh with emotion. This trip to the Grand Cloud region was not long, less than a month in total. However, the story was rich and colorful, full of twists and turns. No, it was simply 3,000 twists and turns. At this time, when he slowly recalled it in his mind, he couldn't help but feel tired and powerless. However, looking at by Xueqian who was happily chatting with Lu Li and the cat girl Ling Yan on the side. No matter how hard it was worth it. Before long, the cloud wave boat pierced through the clouds. The landscape of the Grand Cloud Mountain was hidden behind a layer of mist. Wang Lu retracted his gaze and inwardly sighed. Oh, Grand Cloud Mountain, I haven't let you down for the time being. Although Xueqian has just transformed and has to leave her hometown, it's still much better than being enslaved. Moreover, Spirit Sword Mountain is also a blessed place, so Bai Xueqian should be able to live happily. So, please rest assured. Wang Lu lowered his head and clenched a round white stone in his hand. It was an inconspicuous pebble from the Green Lake, but it was an important souvenir of Wang Lu's experiential learning. Chapter 220. From Cloud Region back to Spirit Sword Mountain. It was a safe journey. After returning to the mountain, their life was also peaceful and comfortable, and there were no more changes. Previously, when Wang Lu made the pledge to marry Bai Xueqian, he clearly felt a few inexplicable chills behind his back. However, after that, there was no follow-up, as if everything was just an illusion. After returning to the mountain, the experiential learning team was naturally disbanded. Lu Li returned to the Brilliant Peak and reported the experiential learning to her master Zhou Ming. Bai Xueqian and the cat girl Ling Yan, led by Wang Wu, went to visit the sect leader of Spirit Sword Sect, and then very smoothly obtained the sword mark of Lingjian School. From then on, they were officially members of Spirit Sword Sect. Moreover, all of their treatment was similar to that of Taoist Master King Pil, completely without any discrimination because of their spirit beast origin. Some sects would not talk about the equality of all living beings, because true equality never needed to be talked about. Quan Zhouhua was still full of foolishness, living a carefree life. This experiential learning with Wang Lu was not that bright, but after carefully combing through the development of events, it was not difficult to find out that everything was actually because of it. However, it was hard to say how much of it was the will of heaven and how much of it was the will of man. As for Wang Lu himself, after a long time, he enjoyed the medicinal bath personally prepared by his master, as well as the blood circulation technique personally performed by his master. His whole body seemed to have been reborn. Of course, he had no other choice. Previously, because of the pressure from Xiao Bo, Wang Lu had to sacrifice his means of retreat and sacrifice the immature innate non-phased diamond sword. That sword strike certainly made his swordsmanship a step further, but the price was also quite heavy, and the burden on his body was far beyond the limit. After that sword strike, Wang Lu immediately restrained his magical power and suppressed his body. However, the damage had actually been done. At that time, the exhaustion he felt was just an appearance. What was hidden underneath was a deep hidden danger. Fortunately, his master was there. With a medicinal bath and a blood circulation technique, most of the hidden danger in Wang Lu's body was eliminated. As for the remaining part, with the natural healing ability of non-phase sword bone, it would not take long for the injury to completely recover. The problem that was worth paying attention to was not these. If you were to evaluate it yourself, how many points would you give yourself in this experiential learning? After the massage, while wiping her hands with a towel, Wang Wu asked Wang Lu, who was lying on the bed with his upper body bare. At this time, Wang Lu's blood vessels were relaxed, and he was in a state of ecstasy. His voice carried a sense of enjoyment and laziness. Of course it's 100 points. Wang Wu spat. I really should have rubbed your face a little more just now. 100 points? How dare you say that? Wang Lu added unhurriedly. A full score of 200. In the end, even you, master, were alarmed. How could I have the nerve to give myself a full score? Wang Wu said, it's good that you know. If I didn't save you, you would have been played to death by the elders of the beast taming school. Speaking of the dangerous situation at that time, Wang Lu sighed with emotion. It's not easy to pull a tooth out of a tiger's mouth. His master sighed with emotion. Pulling a tooth out of a tiger's mouth is indeed not easy, but in fact with your ability, it's not difficult at all. But you, relying on your superiority as a professional adventurer, didn't explain. Not only did you want to pull a tooth out of a tiger, you also wanted to make it explode. This is a typical case of if you don't seek death, you won't die. Think about it yourself. If you were a little more low-key when you first arrived in Yunzhou and took the initiative to avoid a direct conflict with the beast taming school, wouldn't the later development be a lot smoother? Wang Lu sighed and didn't say much. First, he was tired and lazy, and had no strength to refute. Second, his master pointed straight to the point and was not wrong. If from the very beginning, he didn't care about the offense of the two junior disciples of the beast taming school and always hid in the dark, the later development would not have been so twists and turns. With Wang Lu's methods, he could have laid out a plan while the enemy was in the light and he was in the dark. He could have taken away the immortal beasts without alarming anyone. As a result, the actual operation was just brute force. The tactic was exquisite, but the strategy was somewhat suicidal. Of course, you can also shirk it by saying that it's to earn reputation points. But, in the end, it's more about face. The lead disciple of the Spirit Sword Mountain, the Wisdom sect leader, none of these titles allow you to be low-key. Therefore, even though you know that your cultivation is not enough, you still insist on going against the heaven's will, dancing on the tip of a knife. Fortunately, the final result is not bad. It really let you go through more than half of the road of going against the heaven. If not for by Xueqi falling in love with you, even if I came forward, I wouldn't be able to take her back. So, for the time being, I'll give you a passing score. In short, although this experiential learning is not long, there are a lot of things that are worth summarizing. In the next 2 days, while you're recuperating and can't cultivate, write a report for me. Wang Lu almost jumped out of bed. Write what report? The report about the experiential learning on the Grand Cloud Mountain in the Cloud region, mainly from the experiential learning background, team composition, experiential learning process, experience, and other aspects. Not only should it reflect the results, but it also needs to check the problems, including the problems in your immortal cultivation and immortal cultivation style. It needs to be thoroughly analyzed and come up with a practical solution. What the? Do I have to take a bath to treat my illness? It hasn't been long since I came down from the mountain. When did this kind of unhealthy trend start to blow up on the mountain? His Excellency Master expressionlessly said, in addition to writing the report, I believe that in a few days, the Beast Master School's letter of protest will be sent to the Wanxian League headquarters. Although in general, we won't have too much trouble, this war of words is inevitable. At that time, you will be responsible for the exchange of documents and wrangling with the Beast Master School. What the? Moreover, since this time because of an immortal opportunity, you directly advance to the shoot on stage, including the non-phase sword bone, non-phase sword, and other series of methods, you must prepare for the next stage of cultivation. I have drafted a cultivation plan for you. When you're done with the written work, you can start to implement it. The intensity is not too high. You only need to cultivate for 24 hours a day. What the? Well, that's all for the time being. If there's something else, I will inform you in time. With that, his master ignored Wang Lu's astonishment and stepped out of the door. After walking out of the cabin, the woman looked back at the lazily lying Wang Lu and smiled quite contentedly. Hee, thank me for being gentle and considerate. You stupid disciple who makes people worry. If I don't use these methods to make you as busy as a dog, you, this lovelorn teenager, always let your imagination run wild, and you will definitely come up with some kind of wicked idea. In Yunzhou, you harmed the Beast Master School, but now that you've returned to the non-phase peak, don't come and harm me. At the same time, Wang Lu's subtle youthful mood also made the woman quite disdainful. Obviously, he had already set foot on the road of immortal cultivation for more than 10 years, during which he even developed a large-scale sect with a venerable status, but unexpectedly, he was still troubled by some love affair. Let's be clear, you're the lead disciple of the #1 sword sect in the Wanxian League. You obviously have a supreme weapon that can cut off all kinds of troubles. Big magic sword. It was rare for the non-phase peak's fifth elder to think gently and considerately for once. Unfortunately, things that she was not good at were not good at. She tried to use overtime to mediate Wang Lu's mood, but unexpectedly, the first step of her plan was wrong. Because writing this kind of pain-in-the-ass report absolutely could not relieve people's loneliness. Although in the fifth elder's opinion, spending one's energy to write this kind of pain-in-the-ass report would certainly make people restless, to the extent that they would scratch their head and scratch their ears, making it impossible for them to concentrate and thus distract their mind. However, at this time, Wang Lu's mental state was precisely in the state of, I can do this kind of pain-in-the-ass thing for you to see. Since his master had requested it, and his injury had yet to heal, he had nothing better to do. Thus, he simply put his energy into drafting this pain-in-the-ass report. Although in the eyes of many people, this kind of pain-in-the-ass article was neither gorgeous nor practical, and could be called as a typical waste of pen and ink, but in fact, an excellent pain-in-the-ass article required the writer to have a high degree of clear-headedness. Every word and sentence must be precise and concise. Although it didn't have the excessive elaboration of parallel prose, the content and logic requirements were higher. Especially when drafting the summary report, it was necessary to have a very clear understanding of the whole thing. Therefore, the moment Wang Lu picked up the pen, he was deeply immersed in his memory, unable to extricate himself. Every scene that he experienced in the past few days in Cloud Region was incomparably clearly replayed in his mind. Spirit Sword Sect's top student's retentive memory was brought into full play, including when he first entered Cloud Region, when he encountered the dog-lover cultivator of Beast Master School, when he was eager to fight with Chi Ho, and the unforgettable ripples in the Green Lake. For this indescribable subtle emotion that arose in his heart, Wang Lu could only sigh endlessly. However, he was stronger than his master expected. After feeling melancholy for a while, he recovered the rationality that a professional adventurer should have. There were some things that didn't need to be deliberately ignored and forgotten, but also didn't need to be deliberately entangled. Compared to 5 years ago when he bid farewell to his parents in the Wang family village, it didn't need more willpower to wield a big magic sword to cut off his worries. Let alone this matter was just a momentary sigh. Perhaps it was probably not to the point of falling out of love. However, since he had picked up the pen, he still had to seriously write this report. It was just that, with a special emotion, the style of this report was particularly different. This time, the keynote of this report was mainly about reflection. During the experiential learning, he laid out the layout and design, as well as the brilliant example of defeating a powerful enemy several levels higher than him, were skipped in just a few words. Instead, he spent a great deal of effort in analyzing his mistakes. Wang Lu seriously reflected on his words and deeds during the experiential learning, listing all the imperfections and places that needed to be improved. That list was so detailed that it was enough to make people's hair stand on end. Wang Lu even marked out every moment that he was occasionally distracted while walking on the Grand Cloud Mountain, which was simply harsh to the point that he couldn't concentrate on his cultivation. However, in this way, Wang Lu had a new understanding of this experiential learning. The feeling could only be understood, but it was hard to describe. 2 days later, the fully healed Wang Lu put down the last stroke in front of his bed. Putting down the pen that was full of ink, he glanced at the experiential learning report with tens of thousands of words and sighed. With a rub of his finger, he ignited the Samadhi true fire. In the firelight, the sharpness that belonged to a professional adventurer gradually returned. However, just as he stood up and waved his hand to welcome his new life, the wooden house was kicked open with a bang. His master rushed in, flustered and exasperated. "Stinking brat, you want to burn yourself after falling out of love?" Chapter 221. The troubles of young Wang Lu, after all, did not develop into any major disaster. The lead disciple of Spirit Sword sect, who brandished his big sword to cut off his worries, soon recovered the sharpness of a professional adventurer. However, it was not difficult for people close to him to find that Wang Lu's mood was actually more or less affected. In the first few days after his injury was healed, his whole body exuded a strong aggressiveness, like a male elephant in heat, which might retaliate against the society at any time. Fortunately, in those days, the protest letter sent by Beast Master School to the Wanxian League was copied to Lingjian School. Sect leader Feng Yin Taoist Master casually approved it to Non-Phase Peak, and the Master of Non-Phase Peak, of course, handed it over to Wang Lu to deal with, providing him with a good target. Beast Master School's protest letter was almost the same as Wang Wu's initial expectation. It was nothing more than criticizing Lingjian School's hegemonism, illegally seizing the young immortal beast, killing and injuring Beast Master School cultivators, which had a bad influence and must be severely punished, and so on. Although from the point of view of Beast Master School, this was indeed the case. In fact, in the eyes of the Wanxian League, this protest letter really had no weight. Similar sex disputes happened all the time, and the subsequent development was nothing more than a war of words. According to the general practice, Lingjian School, as the party who got substantial benefits, would most likely issue a few announcements to appease the mood of Beast Master School, and then explain and state the more intense issues in the protest letter. After a few rounds of repeated entanglement, the banners and drums of war gradually subsided. However, at that time, Wang Lu was in a period of strong desire to attack. After reading the protest letter, he sneered 3 times and said in a clear voice, "The whole thing is bullshit." Then he buried himself in the desk and wrote a rebuttal article. Different from the practice of the Wanxian League, Wang Lu's article was like a sharp sword mountain, full of aggression. Not only did it not mean to ease the contradiction, but it also made the problem more intense. For example, the Beast Master School strongly protested about the Non-Phase Peak Master and disciple committing all kinds of crimes in the Beast Master School's territory. Wang Lu clearly stated his position at the very beginning. Who the fuck admits that it's your family's territory? According to the strict regulations of the Wanxian League, the jurisdiction of the Beast Master School over the Grand Cloud Mountain was not clear. The relevant procedures were also incomplete. Declaring the Grand Cloud Mountain as the territory of the Beast Master School was unjustifiable. Compared to Wang Lu, who was recognized by the spirit of the Grand Cloud Mountain, the cultivators of the Beast Master School were more like uninvited guests. What's even more shocking is that Wang Lu found a record from an unknown dusty historical book. 1,000 years ago, there was a predecessor of the Lingjian School who went to the Grand Cloud Mountain to cultivate in seclusion using the spiritual power of the earth vein. Thereupon he simply wrote, "Since ancient times, the Grand Cloud Mountain has been an inseparable part of my Lingjian School." Another example, in their letter of protest, the Beast Master School claimed that even if they didn't consider the territory issue, The capture of the young immortal beasts on the Grand Cloud Mountain was a strategic work that Beast Master School had been planning for many years and had invested a large amount of manpower and material resources. It was completely an internal affair of the Beast Master School. And according to the previous investment, Beast Master School ought to have the priority to own the immortal beasts on the Grand Cloud Mountain. Wang Lu and the others interfered, stealing the fruits of the Beast Master School's work, rudely interfering with the internal affairs of the Beast Master School, and violating the sovereignty of the Beast Master School. Regarding this, Wang Lu vehemently accused the Beast Master School of adopting a series of extremely irresponsible and cruel acts towards the spirit beasts on the Grand Cloud Mountain, including the 10,000 Spirit Chi Gathering Array and the 10,000 Spirit Lock Termination Array, which were utterly heartless and contrary to human nature. They were completely contrary to the concept of equality between humans and beasts that Beast Master School had always proclaimed, and could be called the disgrace of the righteous path of the Wanxian League. As for the reason why Wang Lu and the others interfered, of course, it was because they saw injustice and drew their swords to help. As for whether or not this constituted a violation of the sovereignty of other sects, as everyone knew, human rights were higher than sovereignty, and this was a universal value that was universally recognized by the Wanxian League. Wang Lu and the others were nothing more than actively spreading the radiance of human nature and planting the universal flower. The former spirit of the Grand Cloud Mountain had secretly given her heart to Wang Lu, and the current spirit of the Grand Cloud Mountain, by Xueqi, had privately pledged to marry him. This was enough to prove that the righteous act of Wang Lu and the others was the aspiration of the people, and the general trend of democracy was vast and mighty. If the Beast Master School stubbornly refused to change their ways, they would inevitably become the old scammers that died under the wheel of history. Such an article full of offensive nature, Wang Lu wrote it in one go. Conveniently stamping his master's seal on it, he handed it over to the person in charge of the Spirit Pool Peak, ready to send it to the Wanxian League as a reply. As a result, when the several senior brothers of the Spirit Pool Peak opened the article and read it, they immediately jumped up in fright. They hurriedly submitted the article to the elders of the Heavenly Sword Hall for review. At that time, Elder Lu Li, who was in charge of foreign affairs at that time, also had his complexion changed after reading it, and then directly approved it to the sect leader. Feng Yin Taoist master had always been partial to the non-phase peak, and was also quite indulgent. However, after reading Wang Lu's article, he also sucked in a mouthful of cold air. Could it be that this child Wang Lu has fallen out of love? Although he was surprised, Feng Yin Taoist master pondered for a moment, and then called several disciples of the Spirit Pool Peak. After slightly polishing the text, he actually really published the article. For a time, it stirred up 1,000 layers of waves in the Wanxian League, and the Beast Master School's protest letter was even more continuous. However, although the clamor in the Wanxian League was unusually enthusiastic, the actual temperature of the matter had obviously dropped. In addition to the protest letter, the Beast Master School didn't take any further action. In fact, they couldn't come up with any effective method. Lingjian's school resided in the Blue River region and had very little communication with the outside world. Once they closed their doors and turned a blind eye to the protests of the outside world, even the other 5 uniques would feel like a rabbit pulling a turtle. And this was also the helplessness faced by the common sects in the face of the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League. When the other side made it clear that they didn't want to talk more with you, no matter how much you talked, it would be useless. Not to mention that although Wang Lu's article was fierce, the several core points were very stable. Although the Beast Master School refuted it a lot, in fact, it was very powerless. Of course, as a hot topic, the aftermath still shook for a long time, making the idlers in the Wanxian League excited for a long time. But all of this had nothing to do with the main culprit, Wang Lu. After using an article to vent the anger in his heart, he returned to his normal pace of life, like a noble child abandoning a pregnant girl, throwing the war of words to the back of his mind. Then he directly went to the head Feng Yin Taoist master and asked for the settlement of the reputation points. If it weren't for Wang Lu's words, even Feng Yin Taoist master himself would have almost forgotten that Wang Lu's previous trip to the north to Yunzhou had an important purpose, which was to earn the school's reputation points in order to unlock the title and then obtain the spirit treasure. The reputation point system was originally designed by Lingjian's school to encourage the disciples to actively win glory for the school. But at this time, compared to Wang Lu's actions in Yunzhou, the reputation point system really seemed insignificant. Even the immortal beasts had been brought back, and you still care about the reputation points? But since Wang Lu asked for the settlement, there was no harm in letting it go. The head immortal counted with his fingers and couldn't help but smile. If calculated in terms of the reputation points, Wang Lu worked hard in Yunzhou and earned a lot of points, but in fact, it was far less than his impassioned article later, which put Lingjian School at the forefront of the Wanxian League for a while, and he, Wang Lu, established the initial reputation in the entire Wanxian League, so the amount of points that could be settled could be said to be huge. The head immortal smiled and said, "Considering your actions, the way to obtain the reputation points, and according to the rules and regulations promulgated by the school, I have decided to grant you the title of Democracy Fighter." Sorry, I don't want this title anymore. Titles and the like, Wang Lu already regarded them as floating clouds, and the tailor-made spiritual treasure was not something that could be completed in a short period of time. Coupled with his mood, this matter was completely put to the back of his mind. The experiential learning in Yunzhou allowed Wang Lu to increase his cultivation base by several years in just a few days, directly entering the Shudan stage from the foundation establishment stage. While it was gratifying, it also brought a little pressure to Wang Lu's cultivation base. The rapid growth of his magical power cultivation base made his swordsmanship, body, immortal heart, and other methods somewhat lagged behind. Although it did not cause any harm, he still needed to make up for the progress as soon as possible. After entering the Shudan stage, the magical ability of a cultivator would be greatly expanded. Although non-phase method was a very plain method, there were still many tricks that could be played. In particular, after Wang Lu saw his master's jaw-dropping innate non-phase wealth protection sword Qi, he felt that there was still a long way to go in the road of cultivation. In accordance with his master's cultivation plan, Wang Lu's life was regular and substantial. Of course, it was not to the extent that he lived a 24-hour day without rest. In addition to cultivation, his life was very colorful. For example, in order to improve his diet, on the first day after his injury healed, he went down the mountain to visit the lady boss of the Spirit Creek town. The two sides warmly greeted each other. "Yo, lady boss. Good morning." "Yo, pervert, good morning. I heard that this time, you went down the mountain and privately promised to marry a dog." "Ha ha ha, I can't believe that you usually eat dog meat, but in essence, you're actually a pervert who loves dogs. Moreover, I heard that you have a true love in your heart, but these days you've been lovelorn on the mountain? Ha ha ha, young people are really troubled. Come, eat this plate of stir-fried celery to calm down." Therefore, after recovering from his injury, Wang Lu received the main task of tracking down the real culprit of the gossip. Unexpectedly, when he was in closed-door training for 2 days in non-phase peak, such vicious rumors actually spread outside. "Who told me this?" The indifferent lady boss, while wiping the plate, said without lifting her head, "Of course it's Wang Wu. 2 days ago, I asked her to settle the credit for these years, but she couldn't come up with the money, so she said that she wanted to use an incomparably explosive gossip to pay off the debt, and then I realized that you, master and disciple, are really perverted and have no lower limit." Hey, you believe the nonsense of Wang Wu?" The lady boss snorted. "If it's just empty talk, I naturally don't believe it, but it's not like I haven't seen Bai Shixian in person. Humph, when she mentioned you, the little girl's face was overflowing with love. I'm not a fool. Can't I see that there's something fishy between you two? What the? Now is the 7th month, the weather is dry, the immortal beast in heat. What does it have to do with me? Yes, who knows what kind of magical ability you used to make the immortal beast in heat?" In short, in order to dispel the lady boss misunderstanding, Wang Lu's life suddenly became colorful. Chapter 222. The experiential learning in the Grand Cloud region was not long, but it brought Wang Lu an exceptionally rich harvest. His cultivation base skyrocketed to Shudan stage. The next stage of the non-phase diamond sword, which was supposed to be the most difficult, was inadvertently touched because of his life overdraft. He successively defeated Silverback, Chi Ho, Catgirl, Xia, and even Tiger King Lei Zhen. Plus, after returning to the mountain, he wrote an impassioned article, which pushed his reputation value to a level that his peers couldn't even hope to catch up with. Of course, the biggest harvest was the shape-shifting immortal beast, Bai Shixian. It was just that. Wang Lu didn't think that the arrival of Bai Shixian would also bring him all kinds of trouble. Just to prove his innocence in front of the lady boss, Wang Lu had already spent a considerable amount of energy. As for the rumors that circulated in the Spirit Sword Mountain, Wang Lu simply turned a blind eye to them. One of the main reasons that made the clarification work so laborious was the absence of the person involved, Bai Shixian. After she entered the mountain, the sect leader personally granted her the sword mark, which allowed her to enjoy the treatment of a Taoist master of the King Pill. However, shortly after, she was taken away by the peak master of the Clear Sky Peak, Ao Guanhai, to go into seclusion. In fact, it was thanks to Bai Shixian's good luck that when the girl was full of curiosity, she happened to be seen by Ao Guanhai, who happened to pass by. This elder, who had always been close to nature and understood the spirituality of all living things, could see that Bai Shixian was hiding a great hidden danger. She was the spirit of the Grand Cloud Mountain that was enlightened by the moonlight. After the Emperor Essence, she gained an independent life, and at the same time, transformed into a delicate and beautiful girl. However, in fact, according to the standard of common creatures, Bai Shixian was actually a newborn baby. In the previous 60 years, she occasionally appeared in the mountain in the form of a white spirit dog, just like a baby that occasionally rolled in its mother's belly to show its existence. As a newborn, Bai Shixian was taken away from her hometown. Although she had the physique of an immortal beast and had a strong adaptability to the environment, even without the nourishment of the Grand Cloud Mountain, it was not a big deal. However, the spiritual energy of the Spirit Sword Mountain was far richer than that of the Grand Cloud Mountain, and as an immortal cultivation sect, the change and agitation of the surrounding spiritual energy was relatively intense, which made it difficult for the fragile Bai Shixian to adapt. When the girl was on the mountain, her face always carried an intoxicating blush, as if she was in love, which was beautiful. However, the fact was that her body had a serious rejection reaction. Although Bai Shixian was born with intelligence and could see through people's heart, she couldn't see the crisis in her. Fortunately, Ao Guanhai discovered it and took her to clear the situation. Before, by Cloud Mountain, Sect, Spirit Abode, He Cloud Mountain, by Lucier, Ranha, Su Cloud Sect. The time for Bai Shixian to recuperate would not be long, but it would still take at least 10 days to half a month. However, Elder Ao Guanhai had always been elusive on the mountain, and he usually wouldn't tell anyone what he was doing. Therefore, when the cultivators on the Spirit Sword Mountain suddenly found out that Bai Shixian was missing, they accused Wang Lu of having a mistress in his house, which worsened the already chaotic public opinion environment. And in this chaos, the only one who could bring peace of mind to Wang Lu was Lu Li. Although she had experienced a lot in the experiential learning in the Grand Cloud region, the girl was always naive, like a clear spring in the turbid world of mortals. Contrary to what many people expected, Lu Li actually didn't care about the rumor that Wang Lu and Bai Shixian were really in love with each other. When asked, the girl frankly said, "Isn't it good that we really love each other? I also love little Bai, and I also hope little Bai loves me." Then, what do you mean by secretly in love? Wang Lu lovingly stroked the girl's head, thought for a moment, and then explained, "It means the relationship is particularly close." Lu Li beamed with joy and bounced up and down as she asked, "Then let's also secretly in love, okay?" While sighing with emotion, Wang Lu couldn't help but feel that Lu Li was indeed Lu Li. At the same time, he couldn't bear to disappoint the girl's expectant gaze. He thought, in any case, I'm the one who bought the Lingyun 2000 luxurious flying boat, so why should I care so much? Okay. Hee, senior brother, I know you're the best. Since he and Lu Li had already made up secretly in love, naturally, there wouldn't be any dry wood burning fire scene. In Wang Lu's view, although the girl's figure was plump and enchanting, and her face had gradually become more feminine, as long as he saw her innocent smiling face, Wang Lu felt that he would have a desire for such a person, which was a real pervert. After the joking privately in love, the two quickly resumed the romantic and warm rhythm of life before they went down the mountain for experiential learning. Ding, dang, clang, clang. A series of crisp sounds of metal clashing continued on the training field of the brilliant peak. Although there were dozens of silencing stone pillars at the edge of the field, which absorbed 80 to 90% of the loud sound in the field, the remaining aftermath was still like the spring thunder blooming, shaking the earth. In the training field, Lu Li flew on her flying sword. More than 10 flying swords circled around her body, dancing along with the girl's figure, like a gorgeous rainbow. And Wang Lu's feet stepped on the ground. His sword of Mount Kuan was as heavy as a mountain, which built a strong barrier that would never collapse. A moment later, the 12 flying swords in the sky converged into one, which, like a divine punishment, went straight into the ground and collided head-on with Wang Lu's sword of Mount Kuan. The edge of the training field suddenly flashed a piece of faint blue light. The array that resisted and converged the scattered energy in the field was fully activated, trying to absorb the scattered magical power and sword intent from the astonishing collision. After a long time, as the surging dust slowly fell, the result of the confrontation between Brilliant Sword Heart and Non-Phase Sword came out. Lu Li giggled innocently, wiped her nose with one hand, and made a victory gesture with the other. "I win." As soon as her voice fell, one of her front teeth fell down, which made the girl's smile look particularly funny. On the other side, Wang Lu was both angry and amused at the same time. "Win my ass. Your flying sword didn't work, so you directly hit me with your face? Look at your funny face. What do you think it looks like?" Lu Li confidently said, "Senior brother, you said that as long as I can leave a mark on your body, I win. Look at your chest." Wang Lu didn't need to look to know that his red and white robe had been dyed red by Lu Li's nosebleed. According to the agreement before the fight, it was indeed his loss. This girl. Brilliant Sword Heart's ability to grasp the opportunity was indeed unparalleled in the world. Since the experiential learning on the Grand Cloud Mountain, the gap between the two's cultivation base had actually widened a bit. In addition, Wang Lu had a bit of experience with his non-phase diamond sword. According to the normal fighting style, Lu Li simply couldn't break his sword defense. Before the fight, the agreement was that as long as she could leave a mark on Wang Lu's body, she would win. However, even so, Wang Lu calculated that his chance of winning was more than 80%. As a result, when the fight started, Lu Li's Brilliant Sword Heart and Imperial Sword technique were indeed ineffective. She couldn't even cut the hem of Wang Lu's clothes. However, just when Wang Lu thought that the victory was in his grasp, she suddenly launched all of her magical power. Although the combined attack of the 12 flying swords couldn't hurt the enemy, it pushed the sword of Mount Kuan to the side. The next moment, the girl's pretty face smashed into him like a meteorite. It was really tragic. Forget it, I lost. According to the agreement, I'll give you a month's supply of candy." "Oh, senior brother is the best. You should fix your front teeth first before you cheer." The above scene was not unusual for Wang Lu and Lu Li. Almost every day, they had their routine actual combat training. In this experiential learning in Cloud Region, the two of them simultaneously advanced to shoot on stage in Green Lake. Their cultivation base skyrocketed, and they needed to consolidate it through actual combat. And the best actual combat opponent was none other than each other. As a matter of fact, the practice of sword fight had been around for a long time. 5 years ago, in the sex tournament, Wang Lu beat Lu Li in a big upset. At that time there was a lot of controversy. However, as the person involved, Lu Li didn't care whether Wang Lu's method was honorable or not. She only felt that the other party's cultivation base was obviously lower than hers, yet he still defeated her, which was really an amazing thing. At the same time, she also had a strong interest in the non-phase sword with its amazing defensive power. Shortly after the end of the sex tournament, she took the initiative to ask for a fight. The friendship between the two began from then on. Along with the sword fight, their friendship gradually deepened. In the next 5 years, the two became each other's best friend, but also the best opponent. Their dedication to a mortal path, as well as the relatively simple part of their character, made it so that once they walked on the training field and faced each other with their swords, the cold sword light would freeze all the warmth. And once the winner and loser were decided, the previous killing intent melted like snow and was replaced by a warm and loving atmosphere. In fact, this was inconceivable to many people. In the past 5 years, the two of them had fought more than 1,000 times, and all of them had severely injured each other. Occasionally, they would even alarm the Heavenly Sword Hall elders to come and save them. If they were friends, how could they be so ruthless? And if they were ruthless, how could they still be friends? However, these two weirdos could do it. After this round of sword fight, Wang Lu was willing to concede defeat. Using a spell, he washed away the miserable nosebleed on his lapel and, without hesitation, threw a bag of expensive high-grade candy to Lu Li. That was the specialty of the exquisite pavilion of the mysterious Sky Mansion. Each candy contained a special spiritual object, meticulously made by a master-level immortal craftsman. It was more expensive than the same weight of high-grade spirit stone. The bag that Wang Lu threw was enough to make his master go crazy. Lu Li was overjoyed. She threw herself into Wang Lu's arms like a spoiled child and then happily tasted the candy. It was just that, after eating too, the girl's face revealed a sad look. Alas, senior brother, your cultivation base is improving faster and faster. I'm afraid it will be more and more difficult for me to win against you in the future. This time, she won by using the face mallet, which could be considered as a surprise victory. However, the same trick would not work twice against a professional adventurer. Thus, Lu Li couldn't help but worry. A moment later, the girl faintly sighed. If only I could be as powerful as senior sister Xueqi. The speaker was unintentional, but the listener was interested. Upon hearing this, Wang Lu couldn't help but be startled. Lu Li was a very interesting person. Although she looked silly and stupid, she was not really slow-witted. Therefore, a lot of words that seemed to be inadvertently said actually had a deep meaning. For example, this sentence. From another point of view, if Lu Li was as powerful as Xueqi, would she be able to win against him? And just at this time, a not too big nor too small news came into Wang Lu's ears. The #1 successor disciple of Lingjian School, Xueqi, who went to the Southern Heaven region for experiential learning, had returned to the mountain. Chapter 223. The legend of Xueqi has been a hot topic in Spirit Sword Mountain for many years. The reason was very simple. Apart from the former successor disciple who was deliberately treated coldly by the Heavenly Sword Hall, Xueqi was the well-deserved #1 successor disciple 10 years ago, the big sister of all the disciples in Lingjian School. 10 years ago, Xueqi was just a young girl. Although she had lived on the mountain for many years, she had just officially started immortal cultivation. Her cultivation base was shallow, and she didn't have Wang Lu's ability to shine as a novice. However, from that time on, this big sister had an inviolable majesty in the eyes of others. Majesty came from 3 aspects. The first was her character, which was different from Wang Lu's passion and Lu Li's naive and lively. Xueqi's temperament was very indifferent, like a solitary flower on a high mountain. In addition to the necessary bottom-line politeness, she refused to have any superfluous relationship with other people. The second was because her whole mind was on immortal cultivation, and her dedication to the way of the sword was enough to make anyone feel inferior. As one of the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League, the Lingjian School had a very high entry threshold. Most of its disciples were keen on immortal cultivation, and there were very few lazy people. There were also many like Wang Lu and Lu Li, who often risked their lives in actual combat. However, compared with Xueqi, they were still too distracted. Needless to say, Wang Lu and Lu Li, after the sword fight, they often went to the cafeteria of the Carefree Peak to eat and drink. If Lu Li lost the sword fight, she would go to the Misty Peak to help Aya develop new dishes. Life outside of immortal cultivation was rich and colorful. The other cultivators were even more so. Outside of immortal cultivation, the atmosphere in Lingjian School was quite active. Like in the novels, those madmen who did closed-door training for 100 years, walking, sitting, and lying down all the time were rarely seen in the entire 9 regions. However, Xueqi had nothing but her sword. In the more than 20 years since she entered the Spirit Sword Mountain, she spent almost all of her time in closed-door training at the Stellar Peak. It was only in recent years that she gradually became more approachable. She was obviously the big sister of Lingjian School, but in the past 10 years, a considerable number of people in the sect had never seen her face. It could be considered a miracle. But regardless of whether or not they had seen Xueqi in person, the legends about her were like thunder to the ears. Although very few people had actually seen her in action, there had always been such a rumor in the sect, even in the entire 9 regions, among the cultivators of the same generation. No one could block Xueqi's stellar divine sword. And this was the third and most important reason why Xueqi was revered by people. Strength. 5 years ago, Lingjian School and 10,000 Arts Sect carried out a big competition between their disciples. Although that competition ended in a complete victory for Lingjian School, the strength of the 5 uniques of 10,000 Arts Sect was still fully demonstrated. Were it not for the performance of Wang Lu and Lu Li that was too heaven-defying, Zhan Zai and the others' brilliance was actually unstoppable. Even so, afterward, many of the elders in the Lingjian School sighed with emotion. Unfortunately, their big sister Xueqi couldn't participate in the battle. Otherwise, the 10,000 Arts sect wouldn't have the chance to show off their strength. It would not be Wang Lu's turn to be an unexpected winner. Zhu Shiyao's strength, for many disciples of Spirit Sword sect, has been engraved in their hearts like the truth. Even Lu Li, who is also revered and loved by many disciples of Spirit Sword sect, also held Zhu Shiyao's divine sword in high esteem. When asked, she would always bluntly say, "My ability is far worse than big sister's." Actually, although Lu Li and Zhu Shiyao's entry time was a few years apart, the two's official cultivation time was almost the same. Being able to make a genius like Lu Li feel ashamed of her inferiority, Zhu Shiyao's valiant strength was also enough to prove it. Some people said that Grand Senior Sister was like a towering monument that would never fall. However, people also said that, in front of the monument, a shovel digger has quietly come. Sooner or later, a certain chief disciple who was in the limelight would have a showdown with eldest senior sister. A certain lead disciple Wang Lu, who was in the limelight, had always ignored this kind of rumor. He and Zhu Shiyao had no grievance nor enmity, so why would they want to be tit for tat? In the 10 years since he entered the mountain, Wang Lu and Zhu Shiyao had met no more than 3 times. Each time, they were separated by a long distance, and they couldn't even say a word. In this case, even if they wanted to form a grudge, there was no way to talk about it. If one must say something, it was nothing more than after Wang Lu obtained the title of the lead disciple 5 years ago, there were some sour remarks in the mountain, saying that his title as the lead disciple was unjustifiable and so on. However, Wang Lu never took it to heart. If you have the ability, why don't you snatch the title of the lead disciple on the stage without justifiable reason? If someone tried to use Zhu Shiyao's divine sword to provoke him, Wang Lu would only respond with a sentence. "Let Zhu Shiyao come in front of me and say that." As for Lu Li, over the years, she had almost become Wang Lu's pet, so she simply couldn't be used as a material to provoke him. Wang Lu's mind had always been very clear. He was very clear that his biggest competitive advantage was not the hardness of non-phase sword, but the ability to comprehensively utilize all aspects of the conditions. In short, it was the comprehensive quality. 5 years ago, he defeated Lu Li. Did he rely on his cultivation base? Stirring up trouble on the Grand Cloud Mountain, did he rely on his cultivation base? Therefore, even if his cultivation base was not as good as someone else, he wouldn't care. Now, because of the Green Lake Immortal fate, his cultivation base was able to suppress Lu Li. If in the future, Lu Li overtook him, he would not feel pressured. As for his cultivation base being inferior to Zhu Shiyao, it was not even worth mentioning. On one hand, he really didn't care about the gap in cultivation base. On the other hand, it was because he had enough confidence that even if his cultivation base was not as good as Zhu Shiyao's, he could still find a chance to defeat Zhu Shiyao in actual combat, just like how he defeated Lu Li 5 years ago. Until today, when he heard Lu Li's casual words, Wang Lu couldn't help but be startled. It turns out that in Lu Li's opinion, even if I use all my means, I'm still not Zhu Shiyao's opponent? Is Big Sister really that powerful? With this curiosity, Wang Lu pulled Lu Li and joined the crowd of onlookers to watch the return of his big sister. This time, Zhu Shiyao's experiential learning in the Southern Heaven region attracted a great deal of attention. This was Zhu Shiyao's first formal experiential learning. 7 years ago, she was instructed by the sect leader not to participate in the experiential learning. This was her first time officially stepping out of the sect to participate in the major event of the immortal cultivation world. The content of the experiential learning has long been spread. The sect leader wanted her to go to the ancient sword tomb in the Southern Heaven region to compete for a high-rank spiritual treasure ancient sword that was about to be born. At the same time, there were also hundreds of sects, a total of 2,000 to 3,000 cultivators, among which there were many cultivators from high-rank sections. 3 of the 5 uniques of the Wanxian League also went. Spirit Sword Sect, Kunlun Sect, and 10,000 Art Sect. Of course, these 3 sects sent their disciples. Even so, the pressure of the competition was so great that the cultivators on the mountain were secretly sweating for Zhu Shiyao. In such a gathering of powerful and influential people, no one dared to say that they had 100% certainty. If it was Wang Lu who participated in the experiential learning, perhaps people's confidence would be 2 points higher. After all, Wang Lu was best at fishing in troubled waters, and the more people, the better it would be for him. Although Zhu Shiyao's swordsmanship was divine, she had been isolated from the world for more than 20 years. To some extent, perhaps she was even more ignorant than Lu Li. She had been practicing swordsmanship all her life, so when she encountered a problem, she could only use her sword as the answer. However, in the ancient sword tomb, there were many powerful cultivators, and it was said that there were even great deity stage cultivators. No matter how sharp Zhu Shiyao's stellar soul sword was, she was just a shoot-on stage cultivator. So how could she defeat a deity stage cultivator? With such curiosity and worry, the disciples of Lingjian school have been guessing the result of the experiential learning. Now that the news of Zhu Shiyao's return to the mountain had spread, suddenly, countless sword lights flew from all corners to the Four Divisions Peak, which was the transit station between Lingjian school and the outside world. When Wang Lu and Lu Li arrived, the square of the Four Divisions Peak was already crowded with people. Hundreds of cultivators huddled together, clamoring and seething. Some were curious about the situation, and some were shouting, "Big sister, we love you." The scene was extremely chaotic. If one only saw this scene, perhaps no one would believe that Lingjian school was the one with the most withered population among the 5 uniques. Despite the crowd's interference, Wang Lu immediately saw Zhu Shiyao. Because, although there were many people in the square, the presence of hundreds of people was far less than that of the indifferent woman who was hovering in mid-air. This was the first time for Wang Lu to carefully observe Zhu Shiyao. The woman was as aloof and indifferent as the rumor said. Her whole person was like a cold sword, making it difficult for people to get close to her. She was born with a slender and graceful figure, and had a delicate and refined face. However, that pair of eyes that were as sharp as the edge of a sword made it impossible for others to get close to her. Even if it was just a glance from the corner of her eyes, it would make one feel as if they were being pricked by needles. She was indeed the dignified big sister. Although he hadn't really fought with her, but, to be able to make his non-phase sword intent feel as if he was being pricked by a needle, the intensity of Zhu Shiyao's stellar sword intent was already beyond his imagination. Then when he saw Zhu Shiyao, Wang Lu guessed the result of her experiential learning. It was not difficult to guess, because on Zhu Shiyao's waist, there was a simple and square sword with profound sword intent. The ancient high-rank spiritual treasure sword was in her hand. So the result of her experiential learning was needless to say. Wang Lu was not the only one who saw the spoils of war. Therefore, the cheers soon came one after another. Although Zhu Shiyao's face was still as indifferent as ice, it did not hinder the enthusiasm of the cultivators of Spirit Sword sect in the square. A moment later, a white-haired old man suddenly appeared beside Zhu Shiyao, which made the cheers in the square go up a notch. That was the sect leader of Spirit Sword sect, Feng Yin Taoist Master. The result of Zhu Shiyao's victory seemed to be within Feng Yin Taoist Master's expectation. Seeing the ancient sword on Zhu Shiyao's waist, Feng Yin was gratified but not surprised. He repeatedly nodded and said with a smile, "Well done." Zhu Shiyao's reaction was very cold. She slightly nodded, which could be considered as a response to her master's praise. Then she gently frowned and glanced around. Meaning, "I'm not used to so many people looking at me." Feng Yin Taoist Master seemed to have made up his mind to let his disciple be in the limelight. He shook his head and said with a smile, "This time, when you went to the Southern Heaven region for experiential learning, everyone is very concerned about you." Zhu Shiyao slightly tilted her head, meaning, "What does that have to do with me? You're the big sister of Lingjian school, and also an example for your peers. However, you've always been mysterious, so I, as your master, have been criticized. This time, I want you to stay at the Four Divisions Peak for a while, hoping that you can take this opportunity to show everyone the harvest of your experiential learning, which can also satisfy everyone's curiosity." However, Zhu Shiyao's eyebrows wrinkled even tighter, and her eyes revealed a look of embarrassment. I don't know what to do." However, after a moment, seeing that her master didn't give any hint, Zhu Shiyao could only helplessly bow her head and think. After a while, the woman softly opened her mouth. Her voice was not as sharp and cold as her sword intent. Instead, it slightly trembled, showing a bit of helplessness. She really didn't have the experience of speaking in front of everyone. I'm not very good at speaking." The next moment, the unfamiliarity in her words was completely restrained. "So, I'll demonstrate it with a sword." You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.